tonight to take a Boston City Council for District 3 from the Chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. I want to remind you that this is a public hearing being recorded and broadcast live on Xfinity 8, RCN 82, and FiOS 964, and streamed on www.boston.gov/city-council-tv. Please silence your cell phones. We will also take public testimony at the end of our presentations. You can sign in over here to the left. And if you wish to testify via video conference, please email juan.lopez@boston.gov to sign up. When you are called, please state your name and affiliation, residence, and limit your comments to no more than 2 minutes. That's for public. You guys take what you need. Today's hearing is on Docket 1171, a message in order for confirmation and reappointment of Sherry Dong as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeal for term expiring May 1st, 2023. Also, Docket 1172, a message order for confirmation of the reappointment of Hanzi Bazara, Baraza, as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeal for term expiring May 1st, 2024. And Docket 1173, message in order for the confirmation of the appointment of Giovanni Valencia as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeal for a term expiring May 1st, 2024. And Docket 1176, a message in order for the confirmation of the appointment of Alan E. Langham as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeal for a term expiring May 1st, 2025. Today's hearing, well, we did that. These matters are sponsored by the Mayor and were referred to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Dockets 1171 through 1173. Dockets 1176 through 1179 were referred on November 28, 2022. And docket 1212 on October 5th, 2022. The subject of this hearing is confirmations of appointments and reappointments to the Zoning Board of Appeals, ZBA. And I'm joined by my colleagues in order of arrival, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Louis-Jean, Councilor Flynn, and Councilor Coletta. Does anybody have opening statements? I would like to get right into them. Okay. Do you have an opening statement?
No, I don't.
Do you have an opening statement? Councilor Coletta?
But I'll reserve.
Yeah, we'll have plenty of time. Okay. So I believe what we're going to do here is we'll start with Chris. You can announce Chris is going to give us a quick overview, underview on zoning board, what it is, what they do, and then we'll move forward to the appointees.
A very brief one, Councilor. Thank you. My name is Chris English. I'm the Chief of Staff of the Inspectional Services Department. I'm here just to give a brief overview as you consider the new ZBA appointees from the Mayor, what the board does and how it works. Thank you for having me. So ISD serves as the administrator of the Zoning Board of Appeal. The board is composed of 7 members and 7 alternate members, all of whom are appointed by the Mayor, confirmed by the City Council to serve 3-year terms. The ZBA generally holds 2 hearings a month plus 1 subcommittee hearing a month, and hears approximately 1,100 cases on average every year. The ZBA hears appeals to grant zoning relief under the code or grant special permission to build through a conditional use permit. If a project does not fit the use or dimensional requirements, a building permit cannot be issued by ISD. In such cases, the applicant may appeal to the ZBA and ask for permission to build. The applicants must convince the ZBA that they meet the criteria to be excused from complying with one or more requirements of the code. If the ZBA grants the appeal, the applicant continue with the permitting process. There are multiple agencies involved in this. The Boston Planning Development Agency, the Boston Transportation Department, both submit recommendations to the ZBA related to particular appeals. The Office of Neighborhood Services, the City Council, the neighborhood and civic organizations, and members of the public also provide valuable input on specific appeals during ZBA hearings. However, the ZBA makes the final determination on whether or not to grant zoning relief. Information about specific appeals can be found online through ISD's ZBA tracker. We also have a guide to the ZBA process in 10 different languages online. But as we review these appointees or nominees to the committee, I'll be here to answer any questions you have about the process and the administration of the board.
Thank you, Chris. Quick question. So zoning board members, so if they don't agree with, say there's 12% affordable and they would like to see 18% affordable, is that a function of the zoning board?
As part of a decision on a variance or a conditional use, the board does have the discretion to grant or deny that, yes.
Would they be able to, I mean, like, so if it was 13%, would they be able to hold that variance over the head and say, well, I'll be okay with it if you're at 18%? Is that a function of the zoning board?
The board does have discretion to grant or deny those permits, yes.
So, but they wouldn't be able to go in there and negotiate that? That would be if the 13%, which would match what we do in the city now, were not.
That would be a function, I believe, of the BPDA process.
Okay, yeah. So more BPDA is more on the front end that would negotiate those sorts of things. Okay, and Chris is going to hang around. Oh, and we've been joined by Councilor Worrell also. Chris is going to hang around for a little while in case we have any questions related to this topic here. We didn't do any opening statements, but I'd like to offer you, if you want to do an opening statement, we'll have plenty of time to. No opening statement, okay. Sherry, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Chairman Baker, committee and council members, thank you for taking for this opportunity to briefly introduce or reintroduce myself to you as the case may be. My name is Sherry Dong. I currently reside in Dorchester, and before that lived in Jamaica Plain for 20 years. I moved to the Boston area as a college student over 30 years ago and have stayed ever since. As a child of immigrants who grew up in New York City's Chinatown, I sought out opportunities to find a sense of community with and to be in service to Boston's Chinatown. I did so through interning at Greater Boston Legal Services, Asian Outreach Unit, helping non and limited English speakers with housing, employment, and other legal issues. I stayed with them for 3 years until I graduated and also supported community needs through the Asian American Resource Workshop. After college, I continued my civic engagement, joining the boards of the Asian Task Force Against Domestic Violence and the Asian American Resource Workshop. My current community involvement includes serving on the boards of the Chinese Historical Society of New England, the Chinatown Neighborhood Council, the Chinatown Coalition, and helping to organize a culturally and linguistically accessible food pantry program serving the local Asian community. Professionally, I have also had the privilege of getting to know and giving voice to and working for the betterment of not only Chinatown, but also Dorchester, South Boston, and South End in particular, as Mayor Menino's community liaison to Chinatown, downtown, and the Leather District, and other posts in city government, where I focused on constituent services, employment issues, and housing and community development. And for the past 20 years, I've worked at Tufts Medical Center addressing community health and social emotional wellness needs in partnership with the community. Thank you to Mayor Wu and members of the council for the opportunity to continue to serve the residents of Boston. I'm happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you. So were you an appointment originally, a Janey appointment or a Walsh appointment?
A Walsh appointment, April 2021.
Okay. Councilor Murphy, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Sherry. And it looks like your family's here with you. It's great to see you again. I know that I see you often when I'm in Chinatown, and we're neighbors in Dorchester, and have been on hearings and with you. So just thank you for coming here, reintroducing yourself to many of us, and just looking forward to hearing what my colleagues have to ask, but in support. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Baker.
Councilor Lujan?
Thank you, Chair Baker, and thank you, Sherry. Great to see you. I appreciate the service that you've given to the city, both here and in your civic engagement, and so I appreciate you. Just thoughts for you, and maybe also ISD. Just one of the things that we often hear about and that we see about ZBA and that members of the public are often asking questions about is like that there's like a lot of inside deals being done, or if you know someone, you're all set. And so we know that oftentimes conflict of interest can be a big issue. And so what are your thoughts and ideas in terms of how we can prevent conflict of interest from permeating the variance process and permeating the ZBA?
Thank you for the question. That was actually one of the questions I asked when nominated, because I wanted to make sure, obviously I sit on several Chinatown community associations, and we often have presentations from, developers or others seeking zoning relief, and so I asked what the, process was for recusal, et cetera, and so for myself anyway, I feel confident that, when I see cases where there may be a potential conflict of interest, I would either recuse myself at the neighborhood meeting level, when voting, or at the ZBA level. And same thing with my work, although I don't think we've come before the council in the ZBA many years, same thing, I would recuse myself. And I hope others would do the same.
Oh.
There are requirements for disclosures that cover a member's affiliation with a financial interest in a business or enterprise for 5 years prior to their appointment to the board, and then another 2 years following any action that they take at the board member. So that's an executive order that the board members are under, that they file those expanded disclosures.
Thank you. And do those disclosures require recusal, or are they just simply disclosures?
Depending on the involvement, it's either a disclosure or a disclosure plus a recusal from a vote.
Okay. And just, I'd love if you could engage with the idea of, are there ways in which we can strengthen or improve the conflict of interest that sometimes permeate the zoning relief process?
Absolutely open to any way we can provide better trust in the process, certainly.
Thank you.
Did you say political conflicts? What do you mean by political conflicts?
I didn't say political. I said conflict of interest.
Oh, just any
Yeah.
conflict, okay.
Yep, that's good for now. Thank you. And
Okay.
thanks again, Sherry, for all you do.
Councilor Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Sherry and the others that are here before us. Mr. Chair, I've had the opportunity and the honor to work with Sherry almost on a weekly basis for the last 6 years on many issues: food access, language access, support of immigrants, economic development, public education. But every experience I've had with her, she's been very professional, honest, hardworking, dedicated to the residents of Chinatown, but also the AAPI community throughout Greater Boston, really, Asian American Pacific Islander community. Has been a strong leader in support of immigrants across Massachusetts, across the city. So I think it's an excellent selection, and I know she'll do a tremendous job. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You good? Councilor Coletta?
Thank you, Chair Baker.
And if you want to wrap, opening statements in on this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask,
Yeah,
if I could
perfect.
do, only because this is a subject near and dear to my heart. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for your work and for your service to the city. I was very proud in 2019 and 2020 to develop some of the recommendations and the reforms that are now included in the executive order that Chris referenced, then as a staffer for Councilor Edwards, now Senator Edwards, and in particular in East Boston. We have had the most variances granted to our community. And that's been proven by the BPDA. There's statistics, there's facts, and it has had, it's done harm on our neighborhood. And I think that it's not just East Boston, it's my entire district, it's Charlestown and the North End. And so I would like to, and this is not just for you, Sherry, this is going to be the question for everybody. I think we talk about the standards of applying variances. I think there's a lot of talk about hardships. And so you'll have developers come before you and talk about the fact that this is a financial hardship because they need to make the numbers work. And we know that a lot of these folks are well-resourced, they have access to capital. And that is a hardship that they have put on themselves. And the way that the zoning code works, as we all know, is to protect us, right? But it shouldn't be a burden. And it shouldn't be a burden on small property owners and homeowners who are doing renovations to their properties. But what I have heard from residents is that these hardships that are ultimately granted through variances are harm to our community. And it has a direct impact into displacement and gentrification in East Boston. So I want everybody to, just take stock of this. And I would love to better understand, what your approach is to granting variances, especially your definition of hardship, right? Do you understand your responsibility and your role as a Zoning Board of Appeals member in granting these? Will you consider how it impacts a community's affordability? Because we do have an obligation to ensure that we're meeting our federal obligation under the 1968 Fair Housing Act and affirmatively furthering fair housing, which we codified in the zoning code in 2020 as a first in the nation's city. So, but that is only applicable to Article 80 projects. So, and that's, as we all know, projects that are over 50,000 square feet or 100,000 square feet. So the Zoning Board of Appeals, I see that as the lever to ensuring that we are protecting our communities. Because a lot of these variances that you grant will displace a lot of folks. And so I would love to better understand your thought process as you have developers in front of you. Will you hold them accountable? Will you ask them, is this displacing anybody? What does your affordability look like? Because I think that that is your responsibility and that is your obligation. So I'll stop it there, but to Sherry, I would love your approach to what your thought process is around granting variances, right? And I would love a demonstrated care and concern to community voice, because I've also heard from residents that they take time out of their day and they don't feel heard. And so I would love to understand, how you approach this role in general and everything that I just posed. So, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I've been on the ZBA for about a year and a half, and obviously it's all been virtual. So in terms of participation, it has been a little bit different. When I served in ONS, it was certainly in person, live, and you could see the packed room. So you kind of had a visual sense of the support or opposition for a project. A little bit harder virtual, although I think virtual has allowed more access to people who cannot get into City Hall for those hearings. So that being said, for myself, I obviously read through the cases. I, try to do a site visit when I can. I also review all of the feedback that we get. So, when people submit a letter of support or opposition by email, we get all of those. And so, I read through them, and obviously, the goal is to listen to community residents and to the district counselors and the other public officials who are hearing directly from residents about those concerns. I mean, you are the front line in terms of the concerns of the community. We hear the case once, maybe twice, maybe three times if it comes back for rediscussion, et cetera. But obviously, unless we live in that neighborhood or work in it or have otherwise been associated for a long time, you all are more of the experts. And so for me, it's really important to hear from the residents and counselors, et cetera, to gain better understanding of your perspectives.
Thank you. I'm just looking through my notes here as well. And I think just as a yes or no, I mean, do you consider a financial hardship as a qualification for a variance?
I would not, because I think everyone would probably say that.
Okay, thank you. And that question's going to be asked of everybody. Thank you, Chair.
You're good? Councilor Worrell.
Thank you, Chair. You guys hear me?
Yeah, yes.
All right. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the panel, and thank you, Sherry, for all your work that you've done here in the city of Boston. My question is going to be the same question for all the appointments or panelists, and it's kind of similar to what Councilor Coletta has asked: is how do you balance, some of our goals, whether it's climate, resiliency, the amount of community engagement, having to develop affordable, and then not causing displacement in your decision process. Can you walk through me, your priority and how you come to a decision on how you're going to be voted on a project?
Well, I think my first answer would be I don't think there is one approach because not all projects are the same. And so, again, for us, as not the content experts on any particular project, it is really important to hear from those most impacted and those who hear from those who are most impacted. Projects that go through BPDA already go through a rigorous process. And so I know one of the feedbacks I've given as a shorter term board member is that it would be really useful to better understand not just sort of the recommendation, but maybe just understand a little bit more fully the community process that was gone through. It may lengthen our ZBA hearings, but it might be useful for someone from BPDA to be able to actually walk us through those projects so that we have more insight. Because obviously those, if they've gone through a rigorous process, we have rejected projects that have gone through that rigorous process, but at the same time, it seems in those cases, if they have gone through that process and if we agree that that process is effective, we should hear a little bit more about it at those hearings. So I think that would be useful as well. I'm not sure if I answered all your questions, but
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair. No
Good.
further questions.
And we've also been joined by Council Bach. Council Bach, sort of opening statement, first questioning with Sherry.
Okay, great. Thanks so much to the nominees. And I'll, like other councilors, sort of try to put a couple of questions on the table for everybody. Although obviously, Sherry and Hansi, I've seen you working already on the body and appreciate your service to the city in that respect. As I recall, Hansi, we grilled you when you were on Zoom with us a couple of years ago. So, a particular interest of mine, I think folks are aware that I was involved in leading the unanimous council passage of the abolition of parking minimums for majority affordable housing developments. And so I guess I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts on kind of parking and transportation policy in the city in general vis-a-vis zoning, and then also specifically this question of expediting affordable housing development through the process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I guess I'm up. Thank you. I am familiar with that, and I guess I have a question and a response. I guess my question would be, how well do you feel that has been communicated to residents? Because I know for sure when we hear cases, parking is a high-level concern from residents who oppose projects, and so weighing the balance between there being insufficient parking and not meeting the code in terms of parking versus the need for affordable housing, et cetera. I think there's more work to be done on that in general. I think that could be better communicated to residents because I do think, honestly, that is one of the things we hear a lot when people say they're opposed to something. They say, well, geez, it's a one-way street or there's only parking on one side and, you're trying to build three-bedroom units and so therefore it's not really 3 parking spots, it's, 9 parking spots. And so I think just being able to balance all of those needs.
If I can just say one thing on that, I think, and it leads me to another question. So I think, part of what you're pointing to is there's, I think on a bunch of issues sometimes like a weird dynamic where the city will sort of take one policy step and then the zoning and the variances will still be in another place. And then this question of kind of like, what's that feedback loop of the ZBA sort of understanding the policy direction that the city's going in and understanding the whys of it, right? Because of course, like no matter how much public communication we do outside of the ZBA, a lot of these conversations are going to come to the point at the ZBA. And so sometimes I feel like we as a city should be doing a better job of supporting you all in kind of understanding the latest on what's going on there. And so I think the same things come up with like the compact living unit like pilot, where again, kind of the city went in a certain direction, but then the actual rubber meets the road conversation about the pilot is happening in your guys' meetings on these like very specific projects. So another question I had, Sherry, was sort of your openness as a ZBA member to the possibility of maybe like some like a more regular internal like policy briefing cycle almost for you guys as a board, and whether that's something, I know you guys have a lot of responsibilities, but whether that's something that you would welcome.
Sure. So twofold. My comment was actually more about the residents who participate in the ZBA hearings, because I think, they're the ones, especially the abutters, most directly impacted. And so, when they hear, geez, there's only, I don't know, I'm making this up, 2 parking spots for 3 units, or there's 9 parking spots, but there's, 12 units, they do their mental math, and they're like, wait a minute, but we expect, 6 people to live there, and they're gonna each want a spot. And so I guess my comment is beyond the board, and to say just in general, I think, more communication and education would be useful to residents at large. That being said, your second point is well taken, and I would be open to that, because I think, we do touch upon a lot of things, and it is hard to keep up with all of the policy changes that occur, and things ordinances that pass at the city council or policies with Mayor Wu. And so certainly some sort of, whether it's a written brief or a periodic in-person, virtual or whatever,
Right.
session, I don't think people would disagree with that.
Yeah, no, and I think the thing I'd say is just that, I guess part of what I was saying was that I think like the ZBA board members are sort of like, no matter what else education we do, you're also sort of stuck as agents of the city's like education process on whatever. And regardless of, even if it's not like sort of a policy the board's adopted, being able to say, oh, well, like because I think, look, the reality, right, with the city is that if we grow from 700,000 to 800,000 people, those people can't all bring in cars at the proportion of car ownership today, because until we get flying cars and they're all on top of each other, like there's just not the throughput space. And it's interesting, sometimes I think people don't necessarily think about the fact that actually, like, if you rely on a car in the city, you need the marginal additional person moving into the city to not rely on a car. Like, it's actually important for your car utilization to shift mode, right, of like the newcomer. And I guess my point on all this is to say that, like, it feels, I guess, what I was saying is it feels like we could try to do a lot of generalized education, but because people are very particularly concerned with projects in their neighborhood and they often become first exposed as abutters, I almost sort of like wonder if we should be doing more to provide you with the tools, and not even just to say as a ZBA member, I think this or whatever, but, oh, we were briefed by X agency and this is why they're approving this kind of thing these days, or what. I don't. That was kind of what I was thinking. Well, yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't disagree with that point.
Okay, I think that's what I've got for now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Sherry, so just a couple quick questions. What does zoning mean to you as it stands, and what does rezoning mean for you? If you can just answer those 2 questions. So zoning, as it stands, pretty much everything that gets built in a neighborhood, especially a tight neighborhood, there's a need for a variance someplace, which brings the proponent in front of you guys. So what's your thought on that? And rezoning for me, we would probably lose, and these are my opinions, somewhat of a voice, where now that single family or 3 family on 5,000 square feet gets knocked down and it's automatically 5 units, or through rezoning. And you don't have to go too deep into it, but if you have any thoughts on those. Zoning now, everything coming in front of you, the process of rezoning, where a lot less, I think, will be in front of the zoning boards.
Yeah, I mean, I guess rezoning to me sounds like not something that would necessarily be in the purview of the ZBA, but would rather be at the BPAD zoning commission level. And
do you have any opinion on it, though?
Implementing, so, so like, I mean, I guess you're like, an example might help. So like, are you saying, like, for example, if there were a industrial area, industrial district, and the city.
What does rezoning mean to you?
what I'm describing.
Okay.
What I'm about to describe. So if there were an area that were currently considered, let's say, an industrial use area, and the city decided, you know, we want to look at perhaps introducing housing there, so we may either have them cohabitate or redistrict or, rezone, sorry, something like that. So, I mean, for example, where I live in South Bay, and 20, 30 years ago, when I went there were no residents there at all, right? So it has gone through some sorts of zoning processes.
Right, that was a PDA down there that we put together.
So that to me would be an example of rezoning, both of what I just said. Zoning is working within the existing code, and you know, the interesting thing is, a lot of the cases that come before us, there might be like 10 things listed as code violations, but you know, 8 of them might be pre-existing conditions. And so I guess for me, it would be helpful to know that ahead of time versus looking at a mammoth list and being like, oh my God, they're violating so many things versus
Like a side setback or a front setback.
Yeah, like those are often, I think, pre-existing conditions that, you know, so when they're coming in, they're really saying, well, I want to put dormers, so I'm violating the FAR or something like that, right? But because they already were violating everything else, ISD does not distinguish between new and old.
So if you have a setback violation existing, that gets put on the list of variances that you need to apply for? If I'm doing dormers,
I believe any existing zoning code violation,
Chris is shaking his head,
pre-existing or not, is listed. But what I'm saying is, as a ZBA member, unless I ask, I would not know which ones were pre-existing conditions versus which ones are new.
Okay. Are you pro-development or cautious of development?
I don't know if I'm pro or cautious. I think a good process for development makes sense. So I don't know. That's
A
probably
good
the best
process and a good product.
Yeah.
You look at it individually?
There needs to be process to development.
Yeah. And where are you on accessory dwelling units?
I don't think I've read enough on it to have a strong opinion.
Okay. Yep. Hold on, I'm going to come over this way first. Councilor Louis-Jean.
Yeah,
Sorry, I got to sign my eyes.
Yeah, I want to thank you again, Sherry, and I want to make sure Hansi for being here. And sort of a lot of the questions are getting sort of targeted at you all because you're the first, but don't take it as, I don't think anyone is asking a question based on your record, and I hope you didn't take that based on me. The questions are being asked generally because especially a lot of our residents, there's a lot of frustration with the ZBA process in general. To a point, to something that I think this is where you were getting, Sherry, and I'm not sure if this was the chair that was coming, your lives on the ZBA would be made a lot easier if we had a process that was planning led, where folks didn't have to rely on variances so much because we actually had plans in our neighborhoods that people could follow, and that was really that would predetermine what we want our neighborhoods to look like. And so we're building a city via variance because we don't have a strong planning vision for our neighborhoods. And so I think what it sounds like to me when you were saying that you believe that's in the purview of the PDA, the idea that we need to reimagine and take another look at our zoning code would really make a lot of your lives a lot easier if that's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's the only clarification point that I wanted to make.
Councilor Coletta?
Thank you, Chair. And what I wanted to say is directly to this point. So right now we have Plan Charlestown and Plan East Boston taking place, which is a complete rezone of our code. I think in East Boston, the last time we did this was in 1983. So it's archaic. So we are doing exactly what Councilor Louis-Jean said, which is zoning by variance. And right now that provides unpredictability for the residents and builders alike. And so right now in East Boston, we're actively working through the community process to define what our ceiling is. We're trying to figure out what will be as of right. What will the neighborhood be comfortable with saying, okay, you don't have to go through the community process. You don't have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. There won't be hundreds of cases coming out of East Boston where it's exhausting for you and the residents. So right now we are figuring that out. I do think that because of past actions of ZBA members and just this institution, this system in general, there was a lot of distrust. So what I'm getting from residents is, if we do this, if we rezone to be, instead of a one family to 2.5 stories or 2 families, whatever it is, it's going to be different in different areas, just as on the record. Will the ZBA abide by that? Will they still give variances to something that we just rezoned, which I think is what happened in South Boston? So I think that's something that I would like to have a little bit more clarity on. Like, when we do have Plan East Boston completed, will you abide by the rezone and what has been defined as the ceiling for residents? And again, that will not be just a question for you, Sherry. I'm so sorry that you're getting the brunt of this, but it will be for everybody as well, and I'm happy to repeat it once we get to everybody else.
It's okay. I'm happy to take one for the team. I guess Hansi and I are like the most senior members with really not that much seniority. So, I think to be fair, I would want to hear more about it, and I guess I would want to defer a little bit to ISD in particular, because we're like semi-volunteers, and we honestly need more direction, whether it's from ISD or BPDA or both. I think that would be helpful in terms of answering your question. I mean, I would be speaking out of turn otherwise.
Do you have something to add to that, Chris?
Only just structurally speaking, so the zoning commission creates the zoning code. ISD enforces the zoning code. The ZBA grants variances or conditional uses to the zoning code. So regardless of what the code itself is, if a project is applied for that is a violation of the zoning or building code, ISD will refuse it. An applicant has the ability to appeal that decision to the ZBA. So we can change the code to make it more friendly to or amenable to different neighborhood needs or uses across the city. There will always be a need for the board to hear appeals to those decisions of the code. So as code officials, ISD says, yes, this meets all of the code requirements, here's a building permit, or this doesn't meet the code requirements, you're refused. Your options are abandon your application or seek relief from the Board of Appeal.
Yeah, and BPDA does the planning of it. So when someplace gets planned, how does it get codified into language or zoning?
So usually it's the BPDA that will present a petition to the zoning commission to say these are the changes to the code language. Those petitions can come from a variety of sources, but they will go from the BPDA to the BPDA board. Then they will be recommended to the zoning commission. Zoning commission will take that up through a public hearing process, either adopt or reject the provisions of the code, and then it's adopted. Once it's adopted, it's enforced at ISD's building division level when a plans examiner is reviewing those applications for compliance with the code.
And they would enforce that plan. Thank you, Chris. Is everybody good with Sherry? Thank you, Sherry. You can move along if you want. And so just to keep it moving along, if Norm Steinberg, is Norm up there? Yes, you can take Sherry's spot, and Hansi, we'll start with you. Let us know who you are, where you live, whatever you think is pertinent, and then we'll get into questions. And I think, sorry, but I think what you heard for the questions around are going to be sort of, the questions of the people coming in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Hansi Better Barraza. I just want to take the moment to thank Mayor Wu for nominating me as a continued member of the ZBA. And I also want to thank her for diversifying our board today. Thank you, Chair Frank Baker. Thank you, Councilor Worrell. Thank you, Councilor Lujan. Thank you, Council Bach. Thank you, Council Flynn, and thank you, Council Coletta, for being here, and for all the council members that would be listening to us.
And Council Murphy's to my left.
And Council Murphy. Thank you. The reason I am here is because I feel I can continue to make impactful contribution to the ZBA. My background's particularly in architecture and planning practice that focuses on urban ecology and social justice interventions in the built environment. I believe strongly that architecture should reflect a progressive role in creating resilient communities. I believe in adaptive and participatory approaches, role in creating I believe in adaptive and participatory approaches in the field of architecture and planning to enable cities and citizens to move towards a more just, green, racially harmonious urban environment. I'm a Latinx architect, originally born in Barranquilla, Colombia. I immigrated at the age of 6, was poor, and raised by a strong single mother. Fast forward, I now am a proud resident of Rosendale, and I also work in Rosendale. I'm a founder of Studio Luz Architects. I am one of the few, if not two, in the city of Boston that is woman-owned, Latin-owned. Social justice, diversity, and equity is central to my practice and ethos. Climate justice and actions are critical factors in correcting some of the wrongs in the built environment. Access to clean air, food, housing, and water are essential human rights, and it is my deep belief that it should be reflected in how we build and live in our urban environment. I have a training in architecture from Cornell University and from Harvard Graduate School of Design. I am currently serving on the City of Boston in my current role as an alternate member for the Zoning Board of Appeals. I was under Marty Walsh. Since January of 2021, I have appeared in front of the ZBA for over 26 hearings. I have completed the conflict of interest training per the mayor's executive order. I'm an ethical leader. I'm honest and I'm humble. I'm always looking at projects through a community perspective. When making decisions, I remove the I and think of the we in regards to project impact and benefits when developing our city in a healthy way without displacement and equitably across all of Boston's neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Murphy?
Thank you. Thank you for your introduction and for your service already. One of the things as an at-large city councilor, and I'm at all the neighborhoods, and it's really no different no matter what neighborhood you're in, it always seems like the loudest voice or the most organized group can get the message across, and then quickly learned on this side that then they reach out to like my office to get my support, or the opposite, to stand in opposition. So wondering, and I know like the Pope's Hill is a civic association, and just using neighborhood associations where I live, and Cedar Grove is a neighborhood association, and they often would say, like, the civic association doesn't take a vote. They know that, you know, there will be building in the neighborhood, but they don't take a vote at the civic association. The neighborhood association does. People are a little gray about what legally, like, does that vote mean, and how much of your voice will be heard. And then also when it comes to, you know, just organizing with letters or showing up to the zoning board to, you know, speak in favor or not. But at the end of the day, you've looked at the plan. You probably, I know you want to hear, I'm not saying people don't listen to it, but how do you feel about that when you know that you're hearing a lot of, say, opposition? You could go either way, but opposition, but it's still going to pass, or the other way where there's, you know, a lot of people in favor and then it doesn't. So what's your feeling on that?
So if I understand correctly, your question, Councilor Murphy, you're asking if loudest voice is what gets projected currently on the screen on the ZBA hearings, and how do I ensure as a, let's say, plan reviewer that I am carrying across community concerns across a particular neighborhood. So what I tend to do with all the hearings for all the projects is I tend to do a tally of all the letters that I receive in support and in opposition. And I take the time to do this because I know that many that are working cannot be present. And so it's extremely important that I take the majority of a project's community feedback and have that as a heavy weight towards a particular motion or to a decision when it's called upon.
Just oftentimes, I learned quickly that certain projects, every letter is, some of them I've hung up actually, they're like handwritten with wonderful calligraphy on a card, which I get, not everyone has to do it that way. It can be a quick 2-sentence email, or there's that 500 letters, but it's the same letter, and then you start to look, or they don't put their address, and then you start to find out that they were able to get opposition or support from people who don't even live close to, or an abutter is someone who may have the same zip code or not, like, oh, I live in Dorchester, but you're 4 miles the other way, so how much does it really, like, affect this? So is there any way for you to kind of figure that out for yourself, to feel comfortable that the letters or the calls coming in support?
Council Murphy, that's a really great observation. What is really nice about the membership of the Zoning Board of Appeals is that you have a chair and you have other representatives that have particular questions. And typically, at the end, when we hear a case, we ask the community members that are mostly impacted by the development. And I would say, even though I'm tallying all of the support and the opposition, those that are in close proximity to development is usually the ones that are being called on and heard. So that's how we begin to assess those that are greatly impacted by the project. And when they are also testifying, we ask them, do you live in the area?
Okay, thank you. One last thing, and I would love everyone, when it's your turn, to kind of chime in. When are we going away from Zoom? I know we talk about it does allow some people access that may not have it, but overall, it's like the last of the meetings and many people feeling, we've had, I've been on some recently where there's 300 people waiting to talk on a Zoom and you can't see each other, so you don't get the same feeling. So wondering what your feeling is on when that will happen. I know you don't have the final say, but do you feel that, when you started, were you ever in person, or did you start when we already were in Zoom?
I started when we were already in virtual.
Yeah. So
And typically, I think it's a mandate, and I think Eric can tell you.
Please, yes.
Ends March 2023, so we will be returning to in-person hybrid hearings.
And you're going by what the governor's, right?
That's
But
correct.
that's your choice to follow it, because we have chosen.
That's
right,
correct.
Right, but you're choosing to go till the very last moment that the governor has allowed.
It'll be early in 2023 when we return to in-person hearings.
But you could have, correct, gone back in person?
We'll be prepared to do that at the beginning of the year.
Okay, thank you.
And I would welcome the in-person.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Council Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation and for the hard work and dedication that you've provided the residents of Boston for so many years. I don't necessarily have a question, maybe just a quick comment or a question, I guess. When someone comes before the board, whether it's an attorney or residents, what is the most important information that person is giving to you? And how can they be the most effective advocate for their position? What are you looking for in a response?
When the project goes before us, we're looking at the merits of the project and what is why a variance is being requested, what hardship is being articulated. And so those are the main things that I look for in terms of whether they deserve a variance.
Mr. Chair, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Council Flynn. Council Coletta?
Thank you, Chair. I've made my questioning more concise, so I'll ask. I have 4.
Okay.
And then that, I think, for everybody's sake, we'll just do it one by one. So, understanding that we have a federal obligation under the 1968 Fair Housing Act and affirmatively furthering fair housing, which we codified in the zoning code in 2020, and understanding that the ZBA has a major role to play in reviewing projects that don't fall under the Article 80 process at the BPDA. Will you ensure your standards for use permits, variances, and exception will include considerations of impacts on affordability, furthering fair housing, preventing eviction and displacement, and then I'll even throw in addressing climate change and resilience? Yes or no?
So my role on the ZBA is to look at a project in terms of its density, height, and impact. If the city of Boston, which is striving to do right now, which is to increase affordability, I would tend to ask questions in terms, very specific questions that deal with affordability to enhance that goal. Particularly, I don't think all projects that come in front of us as affordable. I ask them, what is their AMI? What percentage is deep affordability versus 100% AMI and trying to not put in parking, for example. So I think what I tend to do is I try to look at what the city of Boston kind of mission is in terms of its strategic planning for the, my understanding is to be climate ready, to increase affordability, and to enhance our public transportation. So I look at those goals and I tend to ask specific questions that enhances the city's mission.
Thank you for that. And then do you believe that financial burdens, which are usually self-created, should be considered as a hardship that meets the standard for granting a variance?
I would look at a project base, and I'm going to give you an example of a financial hardship. So ultimately, I would say no, a financial hardship is not. But in a case by case, there might be a resident owner that has a 2,400 square foot lot, and the zoning requires 2,500 square foot lot to develop a single family. Potentially that resident might be looking to stay in the city of Boston and to build a new home for their parents, but can't because they're 100 square foot less. So I will look at that as a financial hardship that under the zoning code, they're not able to develop that parcel lot. And I look in the future, we might lose a family, a generation to stay in Boston. So that would be a financial exemption.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Will you practice a demonstrated care and concern for community voice when people take the time out of their day to advocate for their community?
Absolutely.
Okay, and last question. When the community ultimately defines what our ceiling is in East Boston and in Charlestown, and what we will allow builders to build as of right, will you hold the line and honor the new zoning when it happens?
In my role, I am to uphold the zoning code and look on a case-by-case exemptions. If a neighborhood put forward a comprehensive neighborhood plan that wants to restrict zoning to 2 families, for example, then I will uphold the zoning code for that neighborhood. But I also want to say, this is now personally, not me as a ZBA member, I would say we need to be careful with how, we need to look at it historically, what the zoning code did to our neighborhoods, which was to racialize neighborhoods and to segregate even further. And so I'm hoping that the leaders that create that neighborhood comprehension or rezoning can look at the history and potentially to look at the future to see that it won't create future harm for particular demographics in our city. That was my personal. I want to just be clear, my personal values versus serving the city in terms of what a ZBA member should do.
Thank you.
don't have a question really at this point, but I do appreciate Councilor Colada's questioning with regard to how everyone will come and say that, like, financial hardship and cry financial hardship, financial hardship, financial hardship. And if they know that that's going to be a successful argument, then they are going to proffer it. And so I do think that we need to really reconsider how much we grant variances based on financial hardship. I think that we need to ensure that developers are really calculating and thinking about the costs before they even start, putting pen to paper around this proposed development. Especially when you see that, these developers are getting, are making a good living off of these, developments that require variances that often aren't, providing income restricted units to our neighborhoods. That especially is something that matters to a lot of our residents. So I put that, not again, Hansi, not to you, but to the ZBA in general as an issue. And I think that it's tied to the earlier question of conflict of interest. I think that we still have a lot more to do as a body to think about how we get the Zoning Board of Appeal to be a body that the members of the public have trust and faith in, that there is not sort of inside dealing or bribery as we've seen in the past, that members, and again, not yourself, are really have the interest of the community writ large at hand. So again, I thank you for your service. Thank you for your commitment to the city. I will be voting, of course, to in favor. Just want to make sure that we can work together and sort of planning, building out a city that responds to two things that we hear over and over again. One, we do need to be building more. We need to make sure that we are building more housing, and we need to make sure that we're building more income restricted housing so that our families, especially our Black and brown families, aren't getting pushed out of this city. And so a lot of that work is on us, on the city council, but we also rely on you once it gets to you, for you all to be doing the work of the city as well, and to be doing the work of the residents. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Chair, I will leave, but my members of my team will be watching, and we'll send any other questions we have to you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Angie, for all your service for the city. How do you, because you are on the board, how do you maintain consistency in granting exemptions, and what do you prioritize when you come to your decision?
I think in terms of prioritizing, it goes with community support. So I think that's an easy kind of win-win. And typically in the Article 80 process by the BPDA, before it gets to us, it should have gone through that extensive process of ensuring that there is consensus within the neighborhood to build this development. That's what I would prioritize. In terms of consistency, that's a really good question. And I would say, to go back to, I think it was Councilor Bach's feedback to Sherry in terms of, would we welcome touch points in terms of making sure that we understand of certain movements that we should support within our membership. I would say that what I would recommend is, at a higher level, that let's take Mayor Wu's all-inclusive Boston as a vision. How does that get carried through down to the Chief of Planning, Arthur Jamison? How does those values come through in the development strategic planning for the city of Boston? Are each neighborhood getting its piece of pie in terms of development? Is one neighborhood doing more than the other? I would say that we're not purview to that currently. So what we're seeing is where there's development, where there's vacant land. And I think Mayor Wu's citywide land audit is a really great beginning point to make sure that there's consistencies. Because right now we're just making decisions on a case-by-case basis, but we're not seeing all of the effects of our decision. And so I think that's what I would recommend for the ZBA.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Let's
Yep.
Council Bach?
Sure, well, Hansi sort of anticipated me by answering part of my question there. But yeah, I think, I was thinking that another example of like a very sort of niche topic, but it's come up in my district, and I know for Councilor Coletta as well, is the like billboard policy, and questions about variances related to billboards. And I would editorialize and say that the getting a billboard somewhere where a billboard is forbidden in the city of Boston is almost always just I would make more money if I had a billboard claim. I think it's a particularly extreme case of if you don't think that just making less money is a hardship, then it's, I think, a hard case to make. But I think there's been some frustration on the community side that over the years, the BPDA had developed a pretty detailed policy around billboards, and both obviously the specific zones where in zoning they're allowed, but also kind of what the parameters would be for considering any exceptions. But community members haven't felt like everyone on the ZBA is always even aware of that policy. And again, with folks changing, right, the musical chairs, et cetera. So that would just be another example of to me, it feels like, and this is obviously recursive and it's on the city as well, but I think hoping that you all would be open to making the time to kind of get those briefings when there's an updated policy shift. So that
To take that example, Councilor Block, for example, as an architect, I look at where the billboard as a conditional use can be done in our neighborhoods. But I would say not everyone is an architect. And so I think there needs to, that's where I would make sure that in the public testimony, I can provide that groundwork and piece and information to our members so they can make a decision as well on that.
Yeah, and I think that's super helpful because I think it's important. I think that there's one thing that just frustrates a resident if the ZBA votes differently than they were hoping they'd vote. That's a very natural human dynamic. But I think part of what we want for people to have confidence in the ZBA is a sort of sense of consistency and a sense of they're making the decision against a background perspective on this policy that exists. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also Jeff Hampton from the BPDA does provide everyone here would provide everyone here kind of a briefing for us.
Yeah, no, and so
it's just that briefing sometimes comes with an opinion, but we choose to either adopt it or not.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, and I always just want to make sure those lines of communication are open. I think you, in relation to Councilor Coletta, sort of already spoke to affordable housing, but if you had anything else to say on kind of my other question, which is just about, it's about support for expediting affordable housing, and then also kind of this, obviously, the specific instance was the parking minimum. And again, just, obviously removing parking minimums is not the same as removing parking. It just means that if there's a development where the very low income residents are coming from a population that's unlikely to be coming with cars, we can maybe use some of the extra money to buy down affordability or anything. I don't know if you had any comments on that front.
Councilor Bach, I think it was an excellent move to remove the parking requirement for affordable housing because that seems to be the most contentious component within the community of where the development is happening. And I'm reminded of once Representative Russell Holmes once said, if I had to pick between housing a family or parking, I would go with housing the family. And I have to agree with him.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Everybody's good. Just a couple questions from me. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming out. You said you were in front of the board yourself professionally 26 times. So what was your largest project and what was your smallest project?
Well, the smallest projects are in the subcommittee where on Thursdays you only really hear.
So, but you represented, it was your project, just a dormer or something like that. So what was your largest project you've done?
So when I said 26 meeting, I was on the ZBA.
Oh, I thought you professionally.
No.
Okay.
I was basically letting you know that even though I was an alternate, I was an active participant asked to be present at least once a month since my appointment under
Okay.
Walsh.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So what was your process for the Society of Architects? Like, how did they come? Did
Yeah,
this
so-
administration give your name to them, and then they vetted you? Can you just
Yeah.
talk to that briefly?
So the process was, the first process in 2020, there was a call from our professional organization, the Boston Society of Architects, asking if any of us would be interested to sit on the Boston Zoning Board of Appeals. And, for 20 years, I've been an activist, an educator. And after the murder of George Floyd, it propelled me to take all of the activism that I was doing in academia and to begin to share it with the city that I love. So that's when I put forward an interest to the Boston Society of Architects, and my name was put forward. Under Mayor Wu, the Boston Society of Architects reached out to me to ask if I would consider to sit on it continuously again.
And be a full-time member?
And no, at that moment, I had no idea that I was going to be a full member until the news actually broke out that Mayor Wu was putting my name forward as a full member.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you consider yourself, and I asked Sherry this also, pro-development, cautious of development, like where do you fall on it? Not everything's a good project.
Yeah. For me, that's a very easy question, which is for development without displacement. And so the for development without displacement, meaning I see it as a tool for economic development for the city and its residents if it's done well, and if the process is done well.
Yeah. Sometimes you hear about projects displacing when they're on larger parcels. There's no housing there or whatever. Like, how would you view something like that? A 5-acre parcel in the middle of a neighborhood that.
Okay, so I was really excited when past Mayor Janey had put forward this idea and notion of adding a impact statement with all large development projects. And I thought, finally, someone really thought through in terms of how we can begin to assess a development. Currently, I believe that job is now under the BPDA. So I'm hoping that the BPDA is doing its job by ensuring that there's not large displacement that's happening within a particular demographic.
Yeah, so that plays out in the process.
Yep, so I'm hoping that plays in the process.
And I have a project in front of me, not in front of me, but it's BPDA being held up on letters that were basically collected like Council Murphy had talked about earlier, basically at Star Market, Stop and Shop, will you sign this, will you sign that? And I don't think that that's a great way to do it, but they're putting huge weight on, oh, well, we got 700 signatures on a form letter that, we really weren't explaining in depth. You don't really get into the project. And then the flip side of that, I have another project that because it's an affordable project, 700 people show up in a room, and it feels like that's gonna sail through. So where is the balance in that? Like, is 700 letters from like an organization that's in favor mean more than the 700 bodies that are in there opposing something? You know what I'm saying? And that's a balance. And I think the zoning board is all about individual projects, what the benefit and the pro and con for every project. But and we had talked about that earlier. Like, what is?
Yeah, I
can you
think when
weigh
you
that?
I think when you see a generic letter and it's signed 700 times, you just acknowledge that versus personal, impactful letters that are done by particular residents that might have a way more, just because someone took the time to actually write it. I think this is where there is a process for large development under the BPDA that ensures that community members are being heard and met throughout the transformations of that project.
Yeah, and in that process, I'm seeing a lot more of the people that are closer to the project, maybe this is just my
Yeah.
experience, people are closer to the projects are being drowned out by people that are more advocate types coming in
Yeah.
and advocating on a, not necessarily a really local, sort of
Right.
more of agenda items, and that concerns me gravely. It would be nice to see the zoning board be able to separate those, you know, who's a paid advocate coming in here and just opposing this project for whatever, and who actually lives here, those sorts of things. As a district city council that people are asking me to weigh in, I have to weigh it just like you have to weigh it, so. I don't know if you have anything to say on that, or we just leave it alone.
No, thank you, Chair Baker. I would just say that we also rely heavily on hearing from the city councilors, and all of you are very diverse in terms of your opposition or support, and also as well as the mayor's neighborhood liaisons in terms of how they've been also reading the room.
Yeah.
So we take that into consideration to weigh it. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're bringing this up to notice.
Yeah, it's becoming a problem.
Now I'm seeing that now we have to rely on the authenticity of the proposal as well.
Yeah, so the mayor's office has been not taking positions on them. So where is the are you guys receiving any direction? We think that this is a good project. Is it really however many people sitting up there, you're on your own because you only have you're the architect on the
Yeah.
board, correct? So
Correct.
you'll get the plans a week before, so you're able to look at hundreds of plans in a
Right.
week and come up with a decision. Where are you receiving any direction or what?
It's very helpful when there is a direction from the mayor, all city councils, and the neighborhood liaisons, and then we just listen to the community members that are being present. I would advocate that you continue to do so because that's the best way to make an informed decision.
Yeah, well, in development is how I think that my neighborhood became safer and became more of a place where people wanted to be other than some place where they didn't want to be. 26 times. Yes, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll move right on to Giovanni. And Chevelle, if you want to come down and take the next seat here. Giovanni, who are you? Where are you from? What makes you the best person to lead this zoning board? Tell us about you, and then we'll start the questioning.
Thank you, Chairman Baker and members of the City Council and fellow Bostonians. My name is Giovanni Valencia, and I am a Boston resident. I am originally from Bogota, Colombia, and moved to the U.S. 16 years ago. Since I moved to Boston, I have lived with my family in West Roxbury, where I was a tenant for 11 years and finally had the opportunity to become a first-time homebuyer a few years ago. I'm married and have 2 children. Both of them attend the Boston Public Schools. Well, in Colombia, I received a degree as an architect, and I got into a master program for urban planning. I work with the government in city planning and community improvement projects in Colombia as well. I didn't speak English when I moved to the US. I worked in a grocery store for 5 years, and that opportunity allowed me to provide for my family, practice my English, learn about the Boston community, and build my own relationships. In Boston, I have been engaged with multiple organizations as a volunteer, board member, and as a supporter. Most of the work that I have done in Boston so far has been in neighborhoods like East Boston, Jamaica Plain, Roxbury, Roslindale, and West Roxbury. I'm looking forward to learning more about other neighborhoods of the city. Over the last 9 years, I have worked at the Jamaica Plain Neighborhood Development Corporation's JPNDC as a community organizer. Since I joined the JPNDC, I have been part of several community initiatives around safety, economic mobility, leadership development, and the creation and preservation of affordable housing. It is an honor for me to be considered as a potential member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm confident that my expertise and my experience in urban affairs, civic engagement, and community organizing will be useful to the Boston community if my appointment is approved by the City Council. Thank you very much, Chair and members of the City Council.
Thank you. Councilor Coletta?
Thank you, Gio. It's good to see you. Same question as everybody else. I guess we'll go through it one by one. Will you ensure your standards for use permits, variances, and exceptions will include considerations of impacts on affordability, furthering fair housing, preventing eviction and displacement, and addressing the climate change crisis and environmental justice?
Yes, Councilor. That is what I have been doing as a community organizer over the last many years, ensuring that all residents have the opportunity to participate in those processes, to learn and understand about housing development, to express their voices and their opinions, and ensure that they can remain in the neighborhood that they love, that they can participate in processes that will bring more housing to their neighborhoods, where they can welcome their family members or friends who want to move there, and also understand that those processes are going to benefit in the long term the entire city of Boston. Climate change is one of the new components on the development process that we have been including in my work as a community organizer, and I really understand that the entire community, regardless of their background, needs to be part of the conversations about affordability, displacement, gentrification, and climate change, because at this moment we are, as my fellows appointees mentioned before, we are approving or reviewing project by project at this moment, but we need to find a way to see the city as a whole, to find ways to guarantee development for the entire city, and to ensure that the zoning code is something that we can rely on, that we can expect something, that we understand where the planning is going, and that nobody will be surprised by decisions made by the BPDA or the CBA as well.
Thank you. And do you believe that financial burdens should be considered as a hardship that meets the standard for granting a variance?
We will have to see every project individually, but what I can tell you now is that my first project, when I became a housing organizer, I started in 2014. That project was finished this year, so actually almost 8 years after that. And as a nonprofit, we saw that the cost of the project increased exponentially, especially during COVID. Hardship was not a consideration when we were going through the permitting process. I think that those projects are going to be part of the city of Boston for many, many years, and we have to consider the context, the neighborhood, the input from the community and local organizations, and the financial considerations are things that developers have to consider when they are proposing projects. But we, as potential board members with the zoning board of appeals, we have to look at the context and think about how that project is going to benefit or jeopardize that local community for the long term.
Thank you. And I just want to preface this question by saying that I know what your background is. I know that you have organized the community before, and even when we were developing the home rule petition that is still at the State House right now to include a housing advocate on the board and expanding the board at some point, we were thinking primarily having somebody from CDC and from the housing organizing world. But just to be consistent, will you practice a demonstrated care and concern for community voice when people take time out of their day to advocate for their neighborhood?
Councilor, part of my job is to ensure that community members are part of those processes, that they understand what housing is, what planning is, how the permitting process works, and that they feel that they have a voice, that they can represent their own families, their neighborhood in these kind of meetings and settings. Unfortunately, many residents are not able to come to the hearings, to come to the BPDA hearings or the zoning board of appeals because they have 2 or 3 jobs because of language or access limitations, and we have to work harder to ensure that all of them, renters and home buyers, can participate. If the meetings are in person, they have to be welcome to participate. If we find a hybrid model that we allow them to be at work and also take a few minutes to share a comment, we have to open those opportunities for them. But I will do my best as a community organizer and as a member of the community to ensure that all voices are present and that we hear from everybody, not only from the experts or from our organizations.
Thank you. And last question, will you hold the line when we rezone East Boston and Charlestown?
I think, if I remember correctly, the JP Rocks planning process was the first planning process in Boston after more than 50 years. Community members, neighbors, residents, local organizations attended meetings for over 2 years to be part of this planning process, similar to the plan that you are advancing in East Boston. That was an opportunity for the whole community to understand more about development, housing, IDP, et cetera, and we are looking forward to see that the JP Rocks plan is incorporated into a zoning code. I'm not sure that that plan is actually part of the zoning code at this moment, after so many years of the plan being finished. And I'm really looking forward to see what is the end result of the East Boston plan. I started my life as a community organizer in East Boston, and I have seen the changes. And I think that some accountability from institutions to the residents will be great if they know what the plan is, what they can expect for the next 10 or 20 years. That will really ensure that those families can stay there and more families can move into that neighborhood. So I think I want to go back to my initial mentioning about the JP Rocks to say that this is part of master planning. The JP Rocks, the East Boston plan, the Dorchester plan, we are doing master planning neighborhood by neighborhood. My hope is that when we finish doing the master planning for the whole city, the zoning board of appeals is not going to be as important as it is now because there will be predictability.
I appreciate that last comment very much. Thank you for your answers.
Chris, you want to talk about the JP Rocks? Is it codified into language or where it is, or if you can't, you're not really sure?
That would be a BPDA.
Okay.
Better question.
Thank you.
for them.
Council Bach?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gio, I want to also say thanks so much for being here and really appreciate your affordable housing work. Also got to be a little bit coordinated with that when I was at BHA. One of my questions is, as you know, sort of about lifting parking minimums for affordable housing and kind of just in general expediting the affordable housing process. If you have anything you can say on that. And then the second one, again, would just be your commitment to kind of like participating in, attending like policy briefings to the extent that we can get a better system going for just making sure that the city, when it's making those like judgments and setting out those policies, that the ZBA is getting updated on them.
Thank you for the question, Councilor. I truly believe that removing the parking minimums for affordable housing was a step in the right direction. We had projects that were delayed because we didn't have enough parking, affordable housing projects, I mean, because we didn't have enough parking based on what the zoning code required. Some of the projects you can see now that residents use the parking, but that was not really the main interest for the residents to apply to a lottery. Parking is expensive to build. I don't know the numbers at this moment, but last year we were reviewing some numbers that saying that surface parking can cost $30,000 to build, and underground parking can cost $80,000 to build. So especially for affordable housing, if you are requiring organizations to build X amount of units and lower the IDP, the AMI, and also build parking, you are not really making those projects feasible. Now, for private developers, it's a little bit different because probably they have a lot more resources to build that housing. I believe that transit-oriented development is a great tool that we have to increase density in neighborhoods where residents have access to public transportation. But Boston is going through a huge housing crisis at this moment. And I think as a city, we have to consider the pros and cons of requiring developers to build more and more parking or using those resources to increase the number of units and especially to deepen the affordability levels. So that is in terms of parking. Now for policy, I'm learning. I didn't know anything about this a few years ago. My colleagues had a couple of years of expertise as part of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm learning about development, articulating, etc. That is what I do for a living. And I believe that this is an opportunity that we should pass to all the neighborhoods. Residents should have the opportunity to understand development before they come to advocate for the project that they are going to impact their neighborhoods. So I will be more than happy to participate in policy briefings or hearings, especially because I need more information before making those important decisions as a board member if I'm supported by the City Council.
Great, thank you so much, Gio. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So, Mr. Valencia, you're going to be the chair, so you're taking Christine's position.
I don't know that yet, Councilor. I haven't. For what I know, I'm one of the appointees. I am at large. But
Well, it tells me here in this filing that Giovanni Valencia will be replacing Christine Arroyo. So,
well,
looks like you might be the chair. How?
Yeah, the community seat.
Community seat?
It would be, right, it would be the community seat is my understanding because Christine comes from the.
No, I know, but,
I think it's
Oh,
still,
so
it's
just a
still the
community
vote,
seat,
it's
so-
still the vote of the board.
so how do we come up with the chair after? Do you know?
Board votes.
The board votes on it. Will that be in January?
Assuming they're appointed, yes.
Okay, thank you. So,
thank you. Yes.
right, so you're not the chair just yet.
Thank you.
I was gonna ask you how much time you think that's gonna take out of your life.
One step
So
at a
we'll-
time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor.
Yeah, and something to think about maybe for the architect, how much time do you think is right for you to be able to have plans? How much time do you get to spend with it? I thought that when, in the talk of the zoning board, I thought that a couple people should be full-time city employees when you're dealing with large projects, and we talk about where do you get your guidance from. You maybe have the plans in front of you for a week or 2 weeks, I'm not really sure. Do you know how long they'll have plans in front of them, Chris?
The minimum is 14 days.
14 days is the minimum.
That's the cutoff for when an applicant wants to submit revised plans to the board. We do not accept them.
And
14
everybody
days.
on the board has those for at least a minimum of 14 days, and, okay, thank you. So if, we had talked a lot about how you weigh sort of advocacy, how do you deal with a project that you know is a good project, maybe in a neighborhood that you care deeply for, but you have advocates that you're connected to yelling at you to deny this project? What do you think?
Well, Councilor,
And those are all assumptions on my
Yes, of
part.
course.
Hopefully, nobody's yelling at you. Good luck if they're not.
well, that has happened in the past, but
Yeah.
what I can tell you is I think the board members will have the responsibility to review every project one by one,
Yeah.
review the context and the history. We need to rely on the information provided by the ISD and the BPDA. 14 days seems like a long time, but I have been part of projects that spent 3 or 4 or 5 years during the planning process.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure that CBA members will have the opportunity to become experts on every project that they will review, especially if, as we heard before, we are going to review about 1,000 projects in 1 year.
Yeah.
So I will do my best to review every project. If I can, I will visit the neighborhood, see the context, and I will base my opinion on what I can see and review from those documents and what I hear at the hearings from the community members and the proponents. Of course, we have to take into consideration the ethics, the transparency, and I understand that board members cannot engage with developers or proponents, so I will stay clean and clear, and I will base my decisions based on the information presented to us and what I can research myself.
Okay, and last question. Do you have an opinion on accessory dwelling units?
Yes, Councilor. Absolutely, I'm thinking about all the seniors in my neighborhood. Some of them live in very large homes and they don't want to live, but also they don't need 4 or 5 bedrooms if they have those. And they are considering the possibility to build an in-law apartment for them to stay there and bring their children for the next few years. But the zoning code doesn't allow that, or the regulations are very hard for them to even try. So I think that is an opportunity that we should consider. It's not a mandate that anybody has to divide their homes in 2 or 3. If this is passed, I think that IDUs are a great opportunity to provide some additional density, especially where we have in neighborhoods where we have very big homes, and that is an opportunity for families to bring a loved one, their mom or their dad, or create an apartment for a kid who is going to college and is not able to, especially in Boston, to rent their own apartment. So I'm looking forward to having those conversations, and I really think that ADUs could be a great tool for Boston, especially to retain youth and students in our city.
Thank you. Thank you. You're okay. Mr. Collins, you can come and take Mr. Valencia's seat. And Mr. Langham, how are you today?
Okay, yourself?
We're getting there. So tell us who you are, what makes you the best possible choice to be on this zoning board, and some other things.
First of all, I'd like to thank the mayor for this opportunity. I also like to thank the chair and the councilors this evening. My name is Alan Langham. I was married for 34 years, but I lost my wife to cancer. I have 2 children. I am a member of Labor's Local Union 22 of North America. My affiliated local is 22. I have 40 years in experience in construction field. My experience including working as a labor and an auditor. Presently, I serve on the executive board, and I am a shop steward for the past 25 years. I dedicate myself to helping people adjust the company culture and helping them feel value in their roles. I am a longtime resident of City of Boston. I graduated from Boston Public Schools. I am passionate about my family, being involved in the community. I participate in programs to feed the elderly. I coach basketball. I coach football. I also coached at Madison Park High School. I was recognized by the Boston Red Sox for my organization for achievements in the community. My belief system is faith-based. I'm an active member in Grant AME Episcopal Church for 15 years. I held various leadership positions. One of my proud accomplishments was creating a mentor program for young men and boys. As I discriminate, I believe in building a better community through employment opportunities and outreach. I am committed to continue building a strong community focused on diversity, equal opportunity for all.
Thank you. Councilor Coletta?
Hi, I'm so sorry. I was in my office when they introduced you. What is your name?
Oh, my name is Alan Langham.
Alan.
Yes, ma'am.
Very nice to meet you.
You
Thank
too.
you so much for being here. And we all love the Local 22 as well. So thank you as well for your work through that organization. Okay, so my question's same for everybody, has to be consistent. Will you ensure your standards for use permits, variances, and exception will include consideration of impacts to affordability, furthering for housing, preventing eviction and displacement, and addressing climate change?
Yes, I will. As far as housing in the city of Boston, I own a house or 2, and I know people that own houses.
Or 2, do you know if you own the second one or not?
Rent in the city of Boston, I think, with some of these landlords is really getting out of hand. And people in, I'm gonna say, my community is kind of hard for them to make their rent. So I hope somehow, some way we can address that issue. As far as climate control, I'm all for that.
Awesome. And do you believe that financial burdens, which are self-created, should be considered as a hardship that meets the standard for granting a variance?
That's kind of like a tough question for a construction worker, but no,
It's supposed to be.
Right. Hardship. A lot of people come in with hardships just so they can get what they need, and I wouldn't oppose the hardship, but I would have to make sure I look at everything before I make a decision. And basically, I know I couldn't make a decision unless I talk to the board.
Okay. And will you practice demonstrated care and concern for community voice when people come out to advocate for their neighborhood?
Yes, I would. That's something that I do in my community today. I listen, as being involved in the church that I am, I always listen to my community. And I'm basically here, and I hope I'm saying the right thing, I'm here for the city of Boston and for the community.
Thank you. And in terms of Plan East Boston and Plan Charlestown, I think just in general, we've heard from multiple folks now that there is a need for policy briefings and just to be constantly aware of what is happening in the community, and when especially as it relates to strategic planning. And I think we saw a gap when the residents of Boston voted to have cannabis facilities in Boston. And I think that there was a lot of, obviously it was emerging in industry, but I think there was a lot of confusion. So sign me up for those policy briefings. And I do understand, I mean, my world is East Boston, Charlestown in the north, and that's my district, but I understand that that's not your world, right? So right now, Plan East Boston, Plan Charlestown is going through, we're rezoning it, and neighbors are defining what they want to see in their community moving forward and what they'd be willing to live with. And so that's why my question is, would you hold the line based on what they're calling for and what they define and decide the ceiling is moving forward?
I think I would hold the line, because if that's something that the community want, I think we need to listen to what the community want. I don't know if it's going to go that way, but I think we really need to listen to them. So in other words, I probably would hold the line.
Thank you so much. That's it for my questioning. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, a question to you. When you say hold the line, you mean in the new zoning that there's no variances granted?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yep. Thank you for clarifying.
Does anybody, either of you have questions for Chris now before I let him go? Chris?
Just one quick
Yeah.
thing would just be to underscore, and I know Chris already knows that this is my view, but that obviously one of the things that I would hope for is that your office could help to facilitate like some more like kind of regular sessions of these policy briefings, so that the right hand has some idea what the left hand is doing.
We already have a bunch scheduled for the first 2 weeks of January, so.
Great, excellent.
Okay.
That was it.
So
Thank
Chris
you.
can go now? Chris, you're good. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And Councilor Bach, you're questioning for Mr. Langham?
Oh, yeah, yes, thank you, Mr. Langham.
Yes, ma'am.
And thanks for being here from our union world, appreciate it. Just the same question. So the first one, just tagging onto that, is just about, your willingness to attend. Like basically, again, you're walking into this as a new person, but we've just had this history where I think zoning board members have felt like kind of blindsided by new city policy stuff, and then and then folks have felt frustrated. Wait, I thought the city got behind this thing or had a policy on this, and then the ZBA discussion doesn't necessarily reflect an awareness of it. So that's really what I'm trying to push to fix. But to fix it, I think like it takes all of your willingness to actually like attend those kinds of things and get some of that briefing. So is that something you'd be willing to do?
Yeah, yes, I would. I gotta say this. Besides the Zoom meeting and the other phone calls, I am very, very interested in being on this committee, but I'm also want to be able to learn all that I can, because basically so I can help not just my community, everybody's community. And I think it's, if I can get educated here outside of City Hall, I can educate other people about the zoning boards and other things that I might have learned in my walk through this.
Absolutely. No, strongly agree with that. Yeah, and I also think that, for what it's worth, our zoning board being a little more consistent sometimes on policy, and it's tough because obviously everybody by definition is coming to you for variances, there are exceptions, right? But in terms of like lawsuits that come against ZBA decisions and whether they're sustained or not, I think in a lot of cases, if we had a more consistent pattern, it would be harder for those to get sustained. So that's another part of my interest in just helping make it all more predictable. And then my other question was just about like this question of kind of, there's this parking minimums lifting specifically for affordable housing, but just in general kind of, the effort to try to expedite affordable housing development and, find places where maybe it does make sense to grant variances because of that goal.
Affordable housing, I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, the city, I think we need more housing. But me, myself, I did quite a few projects over the years, and it was promised so many parking spots, but the project kind of got too big, and they kind of eliminated the parking spots. And I have to say this because I live on a tight street in Dorchester, and parking is like, it's unheard of. So it'll be nice somehow, some way, if we can find a way to have more parking in the city of Boston.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think where obviously having the parking meet the need is important. I think the challenge, of course, is that like I was saying earlier, there's only so much throughput we can put on the street. So actually, for instance, like in Fenway, one of the neighborhoods I represent, the residents are really fighting to reduce the amount of parking that new projects add, because we know that that's actually bringing cars in from outside of the Fenway, and we frankly want, there's a brand new commuter rail station right there across from the ballpark. Like, we kind of want a new lab that goes up there to be telling its people, like, hey, plan on parking at the park and ride and taking the commuter rail, and don't plan on a spot in here. So it's all contextual, right? But I think that's the tricky bit is both the evidence that with a lot of the affordable developments, historically, the parking's been underutilized just because people not as high of a proportion of low-income population has cars. But then, this issue about places whereby if you build it, they will come, but you actually don't want them to come because you want, there to be some space for the folks who already have cars in the area. But I think those are all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. I think the parking's a balance. I get, like everything, it's a case-by-case, situation. And, practically everybody that you talk to wants to say, let's get rid of the parking, but I'm more in line with you. I think we've got to figure out how we, people that want to drive are able to park someplace. I mean, the union households in Dorchester, where I'm from, where you're from,
Right.
You're a carpenter, you're not carrying your stuff on the train.
No.
So, there's got to be some kind of balance there.
Okay.
Just for your edification, I'd like to hear it from you, that we are gonna, not everything is gonna be zero parking and pass it along. So we talked a little bit earlier about, and you heard it, how to weigh things. Is it, in a situation that I'm coming across a lot of, is that petition driven here, sign this, sign that, sign that. The real person that lives next door or the people who live around it, and this is just more of a plea to you, I would think that they would weigh a little more than just signatures that were collected at Stop and Shop and Star Market. So I don't think I have anything else for you. No, I'm good. Okay. I'm good. So I think, is it Wendy? Katie. Yeah, you can come down and take,
Alan.
Yeah. Thank you, Alan. You can take Alan's spot.
Have a nice evening.
You also. And we'll be voting on these Wednesday. Mr. Stembridge, I'm sorry I took a hatchet to your name earlier. I apologize. Let us know who you are and where you're from and what makes you the most qualified person to sit on this zoning board for Boston.
Thank you, Council Baker. Thank you for not making me get myself in trouble, because I was going to correct you on that.
Oh, okay. Well, once I looked at the name, I picked up on it. I apologize for that.
Not a problem, thank you. My name is Norm Stembridge. I'm was born, raised, and still live in the city of Boston. My life has been spent in the neighborhoods of Roxbury and Dorchester. I'm a graduate of Norfolk State University, a historically black college university in Norfolk, Virginia. Okay, I'm an old graduate of Norfolk State University. After graduating from Norfolk State, I returned to Boston in 1976. I went to work for the then First National Bank of Boston. The bank evolved, becoming Bank of Boston, Bank Boston, Fleet Boston, and finally Bank of America.
And now Santander, I think.
Still two separate things.
Oh, okay.
But the facility in Columbia Point, where I've worked for years, is split between Santander and Bank of America. So, my 30-plus year banking career was something called data processing. Before the internet, before client-server technology, when some computers were as big as this room, basically. While working at the bank, I began my volunteer work, going into the Boston Public Schools to talk with students in the elementary and then middle school level, as a Boston Public Schools graduate myself. I was selected by Mayor Menino to serve on the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan Oversight Committee in 2004. My reason for serving was to repair the decades of damage done to my neighborhood, Jamaica Plain and the South End. Zoning wasn't the issue. Restoring vast parts of my neighborhood were. Working with the Boston Planning and Development Agency, the BPDA, was how the Oversight Committee goes about stitching things back together. Not to digress too much, but this was from the days of highway planning, urban renewal, terms that basically I still don't use with even my friends in my neighborhood in Roxbury. I've seen displacement under those things since the 1950s. I've participated in hundreds of community meetings that deal with affordable housing, that deal with displacement, that deal with people being able to stay and raise their kids in a place they want to. It's necessary, definitely, to talk about affordable housing, but you need to break that up because a number of years ago, it's not just rentals, it's for home ownership also. And obviously, to make things more affordable, the best thing is for people to have better paying jobs and skill-wise, that's going to take them through tough times with their families and be able to come out through things that we've seen recently, like COVID. Having worked with Chief Arthur Jemison in the past, I was called by him on behalf of the mayor about working and becoming a Zoning Board of Appeals member. My answer since then, as it is now, was thank you, I think.
You think?
And that's where I'm going from here.
Excellent. Are you done with your statement?
Yes, I am.
Councilor Coletta?
Thank you so much. I so appreciated your opening statement. Just the perspective you bring and the experience that you provide as well. So just thank you for that. I would like to put on record, because I forgot to while Chris was here, I would like for everybody to also get a briefing on AFFH and all of the important work that we did in 2020. Because the ZBA, like I said, is that lever up until it gets to the BPDA and article.
Briefing on what? Will you say it again?
AFFH, affirmatively
affordable,
furthering
yeah.
fair housing. Say that 50 times fast. Okay, so my questioning, you've heard it before. Will you ensure your standards for use permits, variances, and exception will include impacts on affordability, furthering fair housing, preventing eviction and displacement, and addressing climate change and resilience?
I'm pretty sure it's yes across the board. In terms of, you've heard what I had to say about affordable housing and displacement. In the hundreds of community meetings I've co-chaired, run, worked with the BPDA on, those are issues that keep coming up as there are many issues in terms of housing, not only in the neighborhoods of Boston, across the city of Boston, across the Commonwealth, and across the country. And I think people are starting to pay attention to it, especially once they have to pay more for their monthly living expenses, sure. In terms of looking at neighborhoods for how they may be, for what people want. I've listened to people one way or another in terms of what they want to see in their neighborhoods. In one regard, I've had a blank slate, literally, for many abandoned parcels of land that had to be revived, made useful, brought back on the tax rolls and those types of things. So I've had a different perspective in that, but the surrounding neighborhood has always been at the top of the list, basically.
Thank you for that answer. And do you believe that financial burdens that are self-created should be considered as a hardship to meet the standard of granting a variance?
once you say self-created, that's a pretty, what I'm trying to say, that pretty much rules it out right off the bat. However, depending on the circumstances, if we know what type of economic situation we're in now and what we're trying to bring ourselves out of. But if the hardship is a couple of $1,000 versus a couple of $100,000 versus a couple and more millions of dollars, then if someone can show me that and what circumstances led to that, then I'm going to listen. But then again, well, you had a chance to do this. Back up for a minute. We had one of the longest standing abandoned pieces of property in the city of Boston, probably the last and largest parcel, Parcel 3 in Roxbury, across the street from police headquarters, recently had 2 bidders on it. And going into the last weekend, we pretty much made the decision as to who we wanted to be the developer. And fortunately, it wasn't the developer that said they couldn't go any further, basically based on financing, what their, they had some deep pockets, but as things got more and more expensive, as supply chain issues continued, as prices just kept rising, they had to pull up. So I have to consider things like that also.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And my last question is, again, with Plan East Boston and Plan Charlestown, when we do ultimately rezone our communities, and that is the rule, right? And you are expected to review any exceptions to that rule. Will you hold the line and honor what the community has ultimately decided through both of those processes?
I'm going to look at it first. I'm going to see what people are asking for. If it's been rezoned, then okay, I have to back up again. In terms of looking at what the zoning laws in Boston are, they need to be redone. They need to be updated, basically. In terms of one of the things folks had mentioned before, I hate silos. One of the best bosses I ever had in a corporate environment eliminated silos as best we could. So if there's just people who can't, if we just look at the rezoning, but we haven't done the work that's necessary to get there, the proper work that's necessary to get there, then I'm still going to have, okay, why are you asking for this? What is it? What good will it bring? What harm will it do? And go from there.
Thank you. Thank you for your answers. It was nice meeting you. Appreciate it. Chair, I have to go.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Coletta.
I hope it's nothing I said.
But I'm sending in my questions as well. just to get
Councilor
answers
Blanc?
made on the record.
Okay.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Stonebridge. Same thing. One was just this question about, obviously you've got a lot of familiarity with kind of the history of development policy in the city, but just that willingness to kind of engage in briefings and conversations with departments about new policies as they're coming in.
Yes. I've initiated many conversations with the BPDA, with some other city departments. Okay, folks, what's going on here? What's coming down the pike? What's new? Oh, did I tell you that this sucks?
Great. And then, this question kind of about affordable housing development and how to expedite it, and then specifically sort of your thoughts on the parking minimum exemption that we created last year.
Should we expedite affordable housing? Yes. Do we have to pay attention to the needs of the neighborhood, the surrounding neighborhood? Yes. In my experience, the number one issue that comes up is parking. Let me be clear about that. The number one issue that comes up is the lack of parking, basically. But again, that's how America was developed, basically. Everyone's going to have a house, everyone's going to have a car, and life will be wonderful. Well, when those houses, when there became 4 and 5 cars in one house in a neighborhood, you know, it was made it a little different. But in terms of infrastructure-wise, not doing what we need to do in terms of transportation in this country, infrastructure-wise, it then rolls down into the neighborhoods. So I do see somewhat a lot of neighborhoods, the response to development right off the bat is going to be no. I don't care what it is, I don't care who it is, I don't care what it's for, no. So in terms of working with people and figuring out how, what the real issues are there, is it just parking or is it something else? This is Boston, we have long memories. Was it something that happened in 1970? And, you know, people still have an issue with that? Or is it something that needs to, or is it something else that needs to be addressed now? Parking is just easy to go to. But I don't think it should get in the way of affordable housing, which is, not to digress too much again, but is vitally needed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, right, I mean, parking obviously is a real quality of life issue. I just think that having a house is very much a quality of life issue.
Well, you know.
One of our, you know, challenges, sort of those of us who represent the public, is making sure that the people in the city who can't be at these meetings because they don't have a roof over their head and need one, it's sort of, right, it's speaking up. It's the same way that we all take it on ourselves to, like, speak up for, like, the children because they're not in the room yet, but they're obviously, their interests are in the room. I think about that with, like, you know, folks who might be sitting on a wait list somewhere. Yeah. And it was actually interesting with the parking minimum case with the JPNDC building in JP, a bunch of our strongest advocates for this exemption were the seniors in Mass Senior Action, because a whole bunch of their members were on the list waiting for these 40 senior units in JP right next to a T station. And they were all kind of like, it's next to a T station. I don't have a car. Yes, I sometimes go places by car, but my child picks me up, right? Or like my friend or whatever. And so, yeah, it's definitely, you know, it's obviously a question of measuring the acute need. And my only other comment on all of that is just I sometimes, and I take Councilor Baker's point, we all represent different types of districts, and that has different kind of land use norms. I mean, my sort of joke is like, you're welcome to visit the future anytime. It's District 8, and it's also the past, right? I represent some very dense neighborhoods that have no parking built into them, and far from being undesirable, right? They're places with the highest property values in the city, and I often think, you know, when the Back Bay was laid out, you weren't allowed to park your carriage in front of your house. You had to, there were some central carriage depots outside of the neighborhood, and if you were lucky enough to have one, you had to send for it. And I think a lot about how Boston used to have more people even than we have now, and you have to kind of think about ways to organize.
And it continues. You know, Boston continues to be a desirable city, and it's only growing. So it'd be good if, yeah, we could do something about this like now.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor.
I grew up 15 in a house, so that's one of the ways we change. Now there's
As well.
2 people
Absolutely.
in that house. Mr. Stembridge, thank you for your statement. I just have a couple quick questions. Sure. You had talked about the needs surrounding the neighborhood. I appreciate that comment when it comes to affordable housing. Just because it's affordable doesn't necessarily mean that it's good for the neighborhood or the neighborhood has to accept it, or so you need to stay open to what the neighborhood is advocating for. You had talked about the damage that was caused by, you know, the highways and other urban renewal.
Every level of government in this country.
Yeah, but a lot of the damage was caused in the past, not necessarily through zoning now. Like I grew up in a neighborhood, I never even saw anyone's house get painted till I was in my 30s, so no one was going in front of the zoning. If you did something in your house, you just did it. So what do you want to see built? What would excite you going on those empty parcels? Is it affordable housing? What is it? Dense buildings, 2 families, 3 families?
What we've advocated for through the years is mixed-use development.
Is what development?
Mixed
use
development.
So larger developments with commercial on the first floor?
Residential, commercial, anything that's job generating, basically. So yes, something commercial on the first floor, residential above, or organizations or whoever might be able to use the space. So.
Yeah, what I find the density adds to the safety of the neighborhood, especially if there's a commercial space, a reason to go there, whether it's a dry clean or a restaurant or whatever. Yeah, and the same comment about weighing advocacy. If you can just speak on those 700 letters that are signed outside Stop and Shop, or the 12 people that live right around the affected area.
Oh, you mean like the same letter that just gets copied?
Circulated, regurgitated, or even if we're in person, it's 15 people get in line and say the exact same thing that they handed to on the way up in the line. Are you able to differentiate those?
Oh, yeah.
You seem like it.
You have to look at who's advocating for what, how they're doing it. Sure, it's easy to go to Stop and Shop, in front of Stop and Shop or Star Market or whatever, and just stand and get people to hope, if they want to sign off. It's another thing to go into a local neighborhood itself and see what the issues are. Who do you know in the neighborhood? Who can introduce you to folks in the neighborhood to get closer to the issues that are being drowned out by these 700 letters. So that's what I've tried to do. I'm not going into anyone's neighborhood and tell them necessarily what to do. I try and go in and listen.
Yeah.
And then come out with an opinion after that.
And do you have any opinion on the time that you will have and you don't really know what that time is yet, but we heard from Chris you'll have plans for 14 days. And again, life happens in that 14 days in your day-to-day life when, how often you're going to get to sit with those, 25 plans for this week. Do you want to speak to that at all, or you can leave it alone if you want also?
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
In terms of allocating what I hope is the proper time and doing the due diligence in terms of going through these things. Again, Boston, to our friend Alan's and others, is a booming city.
Yep.
There's a lot going on in terms of the ZBA. How many variances, what types of variances, conditional, whatever else. So will I put the time in? Sure.
Yeah.
It'll take me a little while to get there. But,
yeah. And again, I think that some members should be full-time and then they could provide the direction to the members but that's another.
In terms of what doing with the ZBA committee, which sounds like a fairly recent development, where 3 members meet during the week and then basically come to an opinion that they can take to
like an executive committee within the zoning.
Right. That sounds.
I haven't heard that. Yeah.
That sounds like a good idea. Yeah, sure.
Okay. I think we're good with you, and we'll move on. We're close. Thank you for your patience. And sorry I chopped your name up earlier. Miss Chevalier?
Chevalier.
Yes. Oliver. Chevalier Oliver. Tell us who you are, what's going to make you the best possible zoning board member that you can be.
Certainly. Good afternoon, councilors. My name is Chevelle Olivier. I've been a Boston resident all my life and a Mattapan resident for 18 years. I am the executive director of Mattapan Food and Fitness Coalition, or MFFC, which is a health and wellness organization in Mattapan focused on decreasing chronic heart diseases, diabetes, and other illnesses through holistic approaches such as exposing residents to bike riding and running the Mattapan Square Farmers Market, where residents can purchase local, fresh, and affordable foods. I'm also the co-founder of a minority-owned and Black women-owned community engagement firm called Consult Leela. And at Consult Leela, we strive to include voices that are not normally heard in conversations regarding the built environment of our city, with the emphasis on youth ages 10 to 19. I was nominated by Mayor Michelle Wu for the neighborhood alternate seat. Growing up in Boston, either myself or those close to me have experienced housing instability, food insecurity, and more, unsure where to turn to get questions answered or who is who in the city of Boston. And through my work in community through Mattapan Food and Fitness Coalition, I have been engaged continuously by community members, elected officials, and the like, who eventually became my mentors. And through that, I have developed a passion for youth, transportation, and community. And as I delve deeper into my passions, I realize that the challenges in each of the sectors that I'm passionate about are not siloed and often intersect, especially with transportation and development or housing. The number one challenge with housing and development that comes up is displacement. And I want to be able to support the city of Boston and develop in a space where neighborhoods can stay and enjoy the beautiful changes that are coming or are to come.
You good?
Yes.
Council Bach?
Great, yes, and thank you so much for being here and for your work with Mattapan Food and Fitness Coalition. It's an awesome group, and I envy it. I feel like other neighborhoods wish they had something just like, you know, a sort of homegrown group working on all those issues like you guys do. So thank you for that work. I guess same questions. So first one is just on the policy front, sort of your willingness to engage in policy briefings and kind of keep it iteratively kind of up to speed with how the city departments are moving on stuff.
Thank you. I definitely want to engage more in policy. Most of the work that I've done in terms of interventions have been on the individual level and as well as the community level, but it's the policy level that I really want to take the time to understand a little bit more, because you need to have all three of these things in order to create a community that is healthy and thriving for all Boston residents to live in.
Great, thanks so much. And then on this question of, as I mentioned, we lifted the parking minimum rule for affordable housing, majority affordable developments last year, and just sort of curious to your thoughts in general about expediting affordable housing and kind of how to balance these parking questions that we've been discussing.
I'm laughing because I attend lots of transportation-related meetings, and parking always comes up, and it's always a balance to try to see how you can cater to those who actually need the use of a car, for those who have multiple kids and they need to drop them off to school and then go to work, or take their spouse to work and do all the things that they need to do, but also making sure that the street is or the city of Boston, and the streets of the city of Boston can be used by everyone, not those who just drive. So when it comes to the parking minimums, I don't know a lot of information about that piece, and that's something that I'm learning through the transportation-related meetings that I'm attending.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Yeah, parking. Everything is parking. So how will you, like, where will you look for guidance in deciding on a project? Do you think it could be okay for, say, Mattapan, your neighborhood? It could be a good mixed use, like Norm and I had talked about, like, you know, a restaurant or whatever on the first floor, housing above, and you have your neighborhood against it, but you think it's you think it can be okay or will be okay. Will you be okay taking a position, and not saying that you have to take a position against people that you know, whatever, but you may come across that these are the roles that we have Do you think you'll be okay doing that?
So it's kind of difficult to answer that question because there's many stakeholders that are in play when you're talking about developing or granting whatever it is that the ZBA needs to be granting to the developer. And so first and foremost, you should always be thinking about what the community say when it comes to this particular project. But then it's up to those who are very close to the project, whether it's, so I live in Mattapan, so I'm not familiar with what's happening in Charlestown or what's happening in East Boston or the Fenway area. So I am going to look for those who have toes on the ground, like the city councilors or maybe ONS that's out there to give me more information, provide me more information about what it is that residents are saying in that community. But then lastly, looking forward to learning more from my peers, because as I heard, everyone has lots of different experiences when it comes to housing or being in their community or their professional experiences. So using all those to be able to make an informed decision on what's best.
And you're involved in Mattapan, so you've been, it seems like everybody's had plans in front of them before, like plans for big buildings, that like how do you decipher those? Do you feel confident you can decipher like a huge building in front of you? Do you ask Norm or do you ask the architect, or how do you get through that? Initially in the beginning, when you like, oh boy, this is a 100-story building. What's a pylon? What's this? What's that? Not that you dig down that deep, but how will you collect that information?
So definitely, when I'm up against something that I'm not really familiar about, and housing is definitely something that I want to learn more about, I definitely have to ask the questions. So I probably will be the person on the ZBA board to ask a lot of questions, because I want to be able to, again, make the best decision or make an informed decision on what is best for that particular project that is before me.
And I think it's Plan Mattapan that just came out with the, and it speaks particularly to lot size, so it can only be half lot coverage. Are you familiar with that?
So I'm not well versed in what's in the whole entire Plan Mattapan plan.
We'll leave it alone. Then I don't want to trip you up there. Council Bach, do you have any more questions? No, we're good. I think we're good. And Norm, you can leave also if you want, or you can stay, whatever you want to do. Thank you very much. We will be voting on Wednesday.
Thank you.
David Collins, how are you today, David? Same thing. Who are you? Where do you live? What makes you extra special on being in the zoning board?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a lot less intimidating in here than it was about an hour ago. With just two
Poor
people
Sherry
and
Dong,
10
huh?
people.
She took Sherry Dong and she all buy her a drink.
Right? A little bit about me. So I'm from Rosendale, born and raised off of Belgrade Avenue. One of three boys, God bless my mother. My father's one of 9 from Mission Hill, and my mother's one of 10 from West Roxbury, which resulted in about 47 cousins. So there's a lot of us. Most of which have since left the city due to affordability issues, so forth, and I joined Local 22 when I was about 21, 22 years old and worked on...
So same local as Adam?
Same local as Adam,
Alan.
yes. Right out of the North Shore, which used to be in the North End, and then they moved their headquarters to Malden. But most of their territory is throughout
Cambridge,
the city.
Somerville, that area.
Yeah, well, it's also the North End, Charlestown, Back Bay, Brighton, that whole area as well. Right now, I run a large demolition company that predominantly works in the city, so I'm very used to looking at drawings per your earlier question about how comfortable we are with those. I bought my first house in Rosendale in 2021, so like I said, I've been a member of that community for 31 years now, since I was born. I have had a few projects thus far in my adult career go through the permitting and zoning process, whether that be my own house or other projects predominantly in Rosendale, West Roxbury, and Jamaica Plain. So I'm involved in the permitting, construction, and variance process as is right now, so I'm relatively familiar with it. The first couple times going through it is a learning curve, and then you kind of get the hang of it and you put the pieces together. So that's why I think I'll be an asset to the board.
Okay. Council Bach, you're all done?
Yes.
Council Bach?
Great, thank you so much. Same questions. So first one, just kind of your willingness to attend the policy briefings, learn about kind of what the city's latest, if it's a transportation plan or you've heard about some of the like neighborhood zoning plans that are on, things like the billboard policy I mentioned, just to make sure that you've kind of got all the information and are able to ask questions, and then also able to be our ambassador to the public when you're talking at ZBA about projects, about kind of where the conversation's at.
Yeah, of course. I think that, overall it should probably work more like a well-oiled machine. The more informed you are, the more informed decisions you can make. So going to those meetings seems like a pretty important part of that.
Great, thanks. And then thoughts on this question about, as I mentioned, right, you got this parking minimum exemption for majority affordable housing developments. I think sort of two branches coming out of that, right? One is about how you think about transportation policy and kind of the parking, cost of building parking, needs for parking, other modes of transit, et cetera, thinking in the city. And then the other branch off of that is just looking for opportunities to expedite affordable housing across the city.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a huge affordable housing shortage in the city. The city's crazy expensive. And if you can expedite that process by cutting a little bit of the parking, I think that it should definitely be on the table. I'd like to see the parking get cut closer to, transit areas, closer to the train. So, and I believe there already is some sort of a stipulation in there that cuts it in half, which a lot of people don't know about, but it's in there somewhere. And maybe broaden that a little bit to make it go a little bit further out. But, I don't think it does much good if you cut parking and then people have no way to access the area. So I think it just needs to make sense.
Yep. Yes. Very fair point. Yeah. And Councilor Baker will be back in a moment.
Okay. I'll wait.
So, let's see. In the interim, I'll just ask: have you served on a board or commission before?
I have not. No.
Okay. Awesome. First time.
Yeah.
ZBA is a big one, so
So I've heard.
we're grateful to you for being willing to take on that effort. Honestly.
Yeah. Happy to do it.
And maybe because I have a hard stop at 4:30, I might just take the prerogative with the chair's absence and ask Katie my questions as well, if that's all right. If we could, yeah. Just because I'll have to go in a minute, and you are a West End resident. Maybe. Sorry to go slightly out of order, but if you had thoughts on those two things, on kind of both. Oh no, he's back. Excellent. All right, never mind. We'll wait and do the proper order.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm all set with David. I was about to start asking Katie my questions too, but why don't we go to your questions for David?
We'll get there quick. David, thank you for coming out today. Do you own your own company now? Like the demo company you talked about, is that your company?
No, I work for someone.
Oh,
I do not
okay.
own it. No, I'm a project manager.
And you're a licensed, you're a realtor.
I am.
Labor, realtor.
Correct.
So how did you obviously still hold your book if you're a building trades nominee?
Yeah, so I predominantly am in the laborers. The real estate is kind of a side thing, something that I normally use the license for myself.
The kids call it a side hustle now?
Yeah, that's it. Right? Instead of selling shoes, I sell a little bit of real estate. And I predominantly use it for my own projects, so buying and selling my own projects when I do them, which I don't do very often, but it comes in handy.
So what has your experience been going through the zoning, and if in that telling that story, what's your smallest, have you built anything ground up units, or are you doing rehabs? Or when you say about your experiences, what brought you to the zoning board?
So mostly rehabs right now. Ground ups, I've done some permitting on.
Yeah.
Permitting, and then you kind of get rid of the deal. It's not really my expertise, building steel structures and, buildings that big. But smallest project, I did a dormer a few years ago on Florence Street just to get some headroom.
Yeah.
And that was one of my first projects, so it was a good small one to learn on, because you put a dormer on the wrong side of the house and it trips a whole line of variances.
Yeah.
And right now I have the biggest one we're working on right now that's about to go through is 10 units.
10 units, and you work with a group that does that. And how do you find, so and you don't have to talk about it in too much depth, but how did you find the community process, and then you haven't been to zoning yet?
No, so it's yeah, I mean, I've done a few projects that are smaller than that,
Yeah.
but the community process is, from my experience, much easier. The smaller the project, the larger it gets, the more difficult it becomes. Parking is always a huge thing. But it's a fair process. You know, it needs to be done. Sometimes I'm sure it feels a little bit excessive when you're going for a dormer.
Yeah.
But it is the process, you know. and
Yeah,
it's-
which is part of rezoning, like if we're looking at rezoning everything, like how much comes in front of the zoning board after we do that, you know, some neighborhoods, you know, that single family, we don't want them going to 9 units or 10 units.
No.
And that to me might feel like what rezoning might be, zoning of the future, because it's about density and keeping people in the cities.
I think my fear with, you know, with rezoning is, does it stop that, you know, the guy that just had another kid from putting a dormer on his house and getting another bedroom so that he doesn't have to leave the city, you know?
Yeah.
If you rezone and stick as far and take away that zoning appeals process.
Yeah.
Right? Is he just stuck with that? And then, you know, he's kind of
Yeah,
out
you
of
mean
luck.
if we stay too focused on what the new rezoning
Yeah,
is?
and there is no variance process. You know, Somerville just did that, and it's,
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's not working out well. I don't really know. I'm not.
Well, it depends on what, you know, are you looking to block development, or are you looking to, you know, it
Yeah.
depends on what your end game is, your end use or whatever, but, thank you, appreciate you coming out here today, and buy Sherry Dong a drink,
Yeah.
if she drinks, I don't know if she drinks. Katie, how are you today? And you're welcome to stay or go, whatever you want to do.
I won't wait for you
Oh. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Katie, he's a good boy, he's
I
gonna hang there with you.
know. We've got a good group.
So
Oh,
who are you?
yes.
Who are you? What's going to make you the shining star of this zoning board?
Well, you saved the best for, no, just kidding, best for last. No, I'm just kidding. My name's Katie Wewell. I'd like to thank Mayor Wu, the Greater Boston Real Estate Board, for this opportunity and nomination, and the councilors for your time and thoughtful questions thus far. I've lived in Boston for almost 15 years now in 4 different neighborhoods. First as a student at Emmanuel College in the Fenway neighborhood in the dorms, then off campus at Mission Hill, still a student. Later on, I lived in Brighton, and now I live in the West End. I love living in Boston for its neighborhoods and its walkability. After the discussions today, I feel compelled to say I don't own a car. I am one of those few people. I studied political science at Emmanuel College and worked for nonprofits in higher education, and ultimately obtaining my master's in city planning while working full-time at Boston University. I first became interested in zoning when I took a paralegal professional development certificate course. The last module was real estate, and I thought zoning was fascinating, and it opened the door to the planning field for me. The issues I care about are affordable housing, sustainable development, and equity in planning. Over the last 4 years, I've worked for the City of Newton, and I currently work there as the chief planner for current planning. I work with the Newton zoning ordinance every day and have worked on a range of projects that require zoning relief, including several high-interest projects. I'm extremely excited about this opportunity, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bach?
Yes, thank you. And Katie, thrilled at the idea of having a West Ender on the committee, and I think you live, I was seeing on the resume on Canal Street, so you're not currently in my district, but you are in the Greater West End. And I guess, so same questions for you. First one, just if you could speak to your willingness to, participate actively in policy briefings and kind of stay abreast of the zoning-related policy shifts that are going on in the city.
Yes, I would be definitely interested in staying up to date on, policy developments in the city. I wouldn't want to be in a situation where, I'm totally ignorant about something that is going on or relevant to a petition before us. So that's something I would be really interested in.
Great, fantastic. And then, you referenced affordable housing, but just kind of your thoughts on expediting affordable housing development, and then this question of kind of, how we make sure that we've got transportation policy and parking policy that reflect the desire not to add too many more cars to the city. Obviously, I think a lot about the fact that just that area that you live in around North Station, it's interesting. My district has both the Garden and Fenway Park. And when I was a kid, there were a lot more parking lots around the Garden. And my experience is that a lot more people used to drive to Celtics and Bruins games. And that with that parking disappearing, people have chosen different ways to get to the games just because of what's viable. And then, obviously we've shifted a lot of parking lots in Fenway, but there's still a lot more out there than there is down there. And it's just interesting to me on those two ends of my district, kind of how the parking provision also feeds into what decisions people are making.
Right. So to answer the affordable housing question, so what I've heard in the context of the discussion is removing the parking minimums for affordable housing. Is that sort of the context of the question?
Yes, that's the context of the question.
Yeah.
And that was identified as just a lever. That was frequently a variance that was because something that was needed for affordable housing developments, and then a number of lawsuits were used against affordable housing development were using that as the hook to hang their lawsuit to prevent the building of the units.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely supportive of any affordable housing and affordable housing without parking. I think the sort of where I was getting hung up is, I would still want to make sure it's vetted appropriately. The same amount of review applies as any other project, just to do due diligence. I think with the question on parking, I don't think we've talked about traffic. Everyone who comes to a public hearing will talk about traffic. And I think obviously it's tied to parking, but I also think until we get more people out of their cars, traffic isn't going to change. So I think it's about taking those people who can afford to not drive anywhere and, take transit, change those habits through a good transportation to management plan, subsidized T-passes, make that as easy as possible for them to take transit, and then you'll start to see an impact on traffic. So I think there are still people who do need their car and need to have a place to park, but I think it's about finding the people who can make that mode switch, so to say, and being supportive of that.
Definitely. And obviously one of the reasons actually that we felt comfortable doing this with affordable housing was the fact that we had design review at the D&D level, now MOH, on all these projects. So the opportunity to make sure they had the appropriate amount of parking for the folks living in there was part of that process. I think those are all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council Barr. So you're drinking the no parking Kool-Aid, are you?
I'm living it, yeah.
No, I hear you. I mean, that's nice when you can walk to things, but when you get to neighborhoods, there isn't anything to walk to, it becomes a problem.
No,
But I understand where we're going. But in some of the, you have an affordable building that's 50 units or something, and it's going to be no parking, there's going to be people working in there. So I think we should look at it like that, because I'm afraid that now this new moniker of affordable, that's going to be okay, we're going to wave everyone around Third now because they're saying affordable, and in fact, is it affordable? Can the people in Dorchester get in the building that's being built right there? A lot of times the answer is no, because you need a master's to just go through to get on the list, to get part of the lottery and hopefully win the lottery. So that's just my spiel for now. So Katie, you are the chief planner, current planner for Newton.
I am.
How do you apply, and I don't really know, but I'm going to throw something at you, I hope it doesn't offend you. How do we apply, 1 unit per half an acre to 3 deckers on 3,000 square feet? How do you, is that how different our zoning is, what you're dealing with in Newton and what we deal with in South Boston, Dorchester, Back Bay, Beacon Hill?
Yeah,
what's the difference in how, and can you, how do you?
Yeah, so it depends on what district it is in, single residence districts, multi-residence business.
And I love Newton too, by the way.
Oh,
yeah,
well, I mean, I live here, so
my
loyalty is here.
Yeah.
We look at the lot area per unit, so that's our measurement for density. I'm not sure if Boston has something similar, or it just seems like it's what's set forth in Boston is what is proposed. in Newton, we do have those restrictions.
So how do you deal with, because I'm sure Newton gets pretty active when there's affordable housing coming there and they don't want it. So how do you, are you forward facing on any of that sort of advocacy, or is that more going to counselors, and do you get any of that?
We do. So my role has been in the current planning division to provide a technical analysis and planning principles to petitions, and then we provide that to the city councilors, who are the special permit granting authority. Newton ZBA decides comprehensive permit. So it depends on which board.
Is their council act almost like the zoning board? So they grant the variances, the council
Much of
does?
the zoning relief is granted through the city council.
In a council hearing? Or
It
are there
first goes
special
through-
zoning hearings?
Goes through the land use committee, and then it is voted at full council, who usually take the recommendation of the committee.
So, is planning for Newton, does that prepare you for being on the zoning board here? And if so, how?
Yes, I would say so. I review plans all day, and I, provide technical analysis, planning principles for projects in Newton. We do have transit in Newton, so transit-oriented development, but also, you've mentioned earlier accessory apartments. We have an accessory apartment section of our ordinance that we see a lot of. It's a great way for people to
Age
in place, multi-generational housing. Often we'll see the parents move into the accessory unit, and then their children are in the main house. So I'm glad you had brought that up earlier, but yeah.
Well, I think it's a good way to add units and help families out, basically. I come from a big family too. So you're for the Greater Boston Real Estate Board. How did you become their appointee?
So I was contacted first by Mayor Wu's office, and had a few discussions on zoning. I wasn't quite sure, what I was sort of being asked about, and then a couple of conversations later, I was asked if I would consider being on the Zoning Board of Appeals, which
So did the Greater Boston Real Estate Board interface with you at all?
I had conversations with them close to when the press release was released, and I talked to their leadership.
Okay. And this is an appointed question. Is there any sort of conflict in you being the Newton chief planner?
I don't think so. I'm not aware that there's much overlap between the two communities and, who I work with frequently.
And you're able to take that time off to come sit in person here when it happens?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys. You're welcome to leave. We do have some public testimony. I'll just read who signed up. We have 2 spots, one here and one here. Courtney Pong, Thomas Shuvani. Okay. What about Jesse Canson? Okay, Jesse, you can come to that one. Who are you? Where are you from?
Hi, Chairman Baker. I'm Courtney Pong. I lost my voice. I'm a business owner since 2018 in Roslindale Square, right in the heart of the square across from Adams Park, a part of the 4198 Washington Street building. It's an improv comedy theater. It's the only woman-owned comedy theater in Boston and Asian American-owned theater in Boston. I'm here in enthusiastic support of the appointment. This is leadership, I hope, that will favor helping residents and business owners see the full vision of what we know is possible through, and to see it through short-term growing pains, and to choose solutions that are aimed at long-term sustainable change versus short-term decision-making. So I experienced this short-term decision-making in November of 2021, exactly 1 year ago. My building that I'm in is 4198 Washington Street development. It was supported by 2 city councilors. It was going to go from a single-story commercial piece to a mixed use, 31 units with over 40% income restricted. with below market commercial rents for all of the business owners who are all people of color, including myself. It's in a transit-rich area, as you know from being in Rosendale, bus lanes, bike rentals, and commuter rail. It was denied without prejudice. There was a significant emphasis, as you know, on parking. Despite some of the claims of folks here today about being pro-transit use and sustainability and affordability, the entire building was denied without prejudice and encouraged to come back when we build in more parking. In fact, one of the things that was brought up was take away the theater space and put parking in the back, in the below underground. Why I bring this up today is that I want to know why in a transit-rich area with subsidies that were offered by the owners, we're not encouraging, where shop local is encouraged. Why are we making choices for short-term relief when we know that we need solutions that are sustainable for not just the city, but for the planet? Why are we encouraging business owners to rely on a customer base that relies on cars versus local foot traffic and building long-term relationships over discovery? And the last piece I have is the most concerning reasons that were stated from the board in 2021 were two reasons. The first one was citing that regarding the 6 family units of the 21, and anybody is a family, but 6 family units, that they couldn't imagine a family wouldn't have a car, which is a statement based in privilege and personal needs and knowledge. And the second most concerning piece that was stated by the board, and certain board members were citing that they were reading letters from minority business owners that were worried about parking, which is essentially weaponizing minority business owners against each other, as everybody in our building is an Asian American or definitely identifies as a person of color. So to wrap up, I am in support, and I am hopeful for leadership that will make choices that push us forward on a vision based on the needs of not just this generation, but for 60 years, 80 years, 100 years from now, when we're all gone, but we're leaving something that was sustainable and build community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jesse?
Yep. Thank you, Chairman. My name is Jesse Kansen-Benanav. I'm the Executive Director at Abundant Housing, Massachusetts. We're a statewide pro-housing organization that's based here in Boston.
You came in with Josh.
I did come in with Josh a couple weeks ago talking about expedited permitting and zoning relief for affordable housing. I also, I don't think I just said it, I live in Jamaica Plain. I wanted to, encourage the council to expeditiously approve these nominees. I think as we heard today, this slate shows great diversity, not just racially and ethnically, but also in terms of age, geography within the city, and lived experience. And I think that's what we need here on the zoning board. I would definitely echo many of the comments that Courtney just raised about some of the inconsistencies in the previous zoning board, and I hope those are addressed. I want to push back with all due respect on 2 lines of questioning that I did hear from councilors. One is the question of who is, or rather where is the community, and should we prioritize those who live in the immediate vicinity of proposed projects rather than anyone around the city. We don't have a housing market that is just the Dorchester market or the Jamaica Plain market or the Back Bay market or the West End market or the Rosendale market. We have a city market, and just as what happens or doesn't happen in the city of Newton affects the city of Boston, what does happen or doesn't happen in terms of housing growth and building new homes within cities of the neighborhood, within the neighborhoods of the city of Boston affects other neighborhoods. So, one ZBA reappointee during this hearing did mention the racialized neighborhoods that we have in this city, and I would say that's perpetuated by the outdated zoning that we have, and is also perpetuated when we say that those who live within certain neighborhoods are prioritized, their voices are prioritized in certain development hearings. So I would encourage the council to think more critically about that, and I would also encourage ZBA appointees to consider this as well. Secondly, who is the community? I heard some councilors ask, will you, honor those who, took the time to appear in hearings and listen to their voices? We have a great body of research from right here in Greater Boston that shows those who participate in community meetings about new housing development do not reflect the demographics or opinions of those who live in the community and region at large. So saying that those who are able to show up at community meetings in person, particularly as we're trying to move away from Zoom hearings, have more preference for having their voice heard, I think perpetuates a racist approach to land development and housing in the city. So I would encourage us to think more critically about not just who is the community, but where is the community that we can hear from and take seriously in the considerations about growth and housing production in our city. Again, I'm very pleased with this slate of nominees, and I would encourage all of them to be approved on Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. We have one person on Zoom, do we? Oh, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't see you there. Your name and affiliation?
Thank you. Thomas Schiavone, 48-year resident of Boston's North End. Grandfather of a 2-year-old daughter, lives at the bottom of the street, not for very long because we get gentrified day by day. I've been before the Zoning Board of Appeals for several times with neighbors and for community-based projects. I really want to support the questions asked by your chair as well as the other councilors indicate to me that there's a lot more sophistication in terms of vetting the process. And I wanted to commend Mayor Wu for giving us an opportunity to have new faces and new voices representing the city as it is. The one issue that I think all of us have as residents, and I'm only going to use my 2 minutes, Councilor, is due process, and not just the appearance of due process, and I'm speaking to the nominees, not just giving people a chance to speak, but to thoughtfully doing the homework, trying to understand why these people are raising certain issues. In terms of due process, even the appearance of due process, I won't open an old scab, but we had a community issue that both of our civic associations opposed, and after 3 deferrals, meaning we had to keep on coming back again and again and again, losing time from work and people from daycare, when it came time for the presentation of the opponents, the one person who had an attorney and actually was representing many of the people there said to the chair, our council was involved. It was a hit-and-run accident. He's in a Rhode Island hospital. He's in an intensive care unit, and we asked for a deferral. This was literally
This was the proponent?
This was the opponents of the project.
You guys?
When you
opponent
say
or proponent?
Opponent. The chair seemed very concerned. Oh, how is attorney so-and-so? And then went on to hold a hearing in which were called the proponents, and then immediately took a vote, and we never had a chance to open our mouths, our voices. Never even said, well, I deny your request for a deferral. When that happens, it is so demoralizing to us as residents of not just the North End, but of Boston. It's demoralizing, not only sends a signal about our Zoning Board of Appeals, but about the mayor's office, the neighborhood services, who sometimes know when there's going to be a postponement, but don't bother signaling that to the community before we gather. And it even the waves wash ashore, so to speak, in the city council chambers, because this type of phenomenon occurs again and again and again without any remedial or curative directions, whether in the form of ordinance or in the form of policy. So I just wanted to stress to the nominees that we have expectations that you will do your study and that you will be fair, but we want you to ask the right questions. And the only question in terms of metrics that we've been having in the North End is when we see a building time and time again, a series of buildings brought up, and a project keeps on asking for 9 units, we know why that happens. And in the North End, we don't have property to develop. It's already buildings that are there. They don't want affordable housing. They don't want the 10 to trigger it. And accessible dwelling units, and I know we're the exception, and I'll finish up, Councilor. When somebody makes an apartment basement in a building that has young families, and even people with their first-time jobs, single people, couples, whatever, There's no longer trash or recycling in the basement. There's no longer a washer dryer. There's no longer a place to put carriages and bicycles and seasonal things for people, like even their skis. The point is that you have to keep these cases on a case-by-case basis. So to say, are we in favor?
Well, when they get deferred, the community doesn't get a chance to speak on it, I think, sometimes.
It's not just the
in the
speaking.
deferrals.
Right. It's
Yeah,
not
and
just.
that goes for councilors also. We're not able to weigh in on them, so it becomes somewhat of a ploy, just defer, and then on that second, third, fourth deferral, okay, nobody's here, look around, let's do it now.
Right, but there could be remedial ordinances or policies.
Now, you're from the north end, you talk about the north end, well, how do you feel about people from, say, Brighton coming in and weighing in on your projects? If North End's all opposed to it, 10 people from Brighton show up, say, this is good for the north end.
We know we're not just 11,000 people, Councilor. We're 2 million Freedom Trail walkers. We're all the Bruins and Celtics fans who come flooding into our neighborhood. We were COVID magnets during lockdown.
Do you want them all weighing in on your neighborhood issues?
I want people who are appointed representatives. We don't vote for these people, but we expect that the vetting process, we expect that they understand the
You talk about in the processes, not at zoning.
Honestly, I'm not, North Enders just shouldn't have to say of what happens. For example, down at the waterfront, there was going to be a 9-story condominium luxury. They were going to take over public property. To this day, it is the Elliott School Science Annex, and we are so proud of that. So we had people from other neighborhoods advocating that because we all advocate for the Boston.
Down by the Washington Street Bridge, that Elliott School?
Exactly, and near the tennis courts.
They did that when they closed the print department.
There you go. You're absolutely right. And today, that's the North Bennett Industrial School, one of the gemstones in our city's educational.
I spent 25 years at the print department.
Well, then you know the North End.
I do.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. And Mr. Robert Orthman is on Zoom. Mr. Orthman, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the opportunity to testify over Zoom. Just want to thank you and the councilors for holding this hearing, particularly coming up on the end of the legislative cycle for the council. My name is Robert Orthman. I'm a Rosendale resident. I live on the aptly named Rosendale Avenue. I grew up in Rosendale and in West Roxbury and lived here my whole life. I'm a board member and the chair of the Housing and Development Committee for a neighborhood organization known as Walk Up Rosendale. We're a volunteer organization comprised of residents and small business owners. We seek to essentially turn around what is known as the quote-unquote community voice. We are a voice for yes in our community. We are a voice for more housing, more transit, more walkability. Yes in our backyard, if you will, sometimes in our literal backyard. In March of this year, we issued an open letter to Mayor Wu calling on a new slate of ZBA appointees after a number of high-profile Rosendale projects were denied by the current zoning board. One was mentioned previously that I won't rehash on 4198 Washington Street, but there were other projects as well that were denied for seemingly unclear and at times I would say myopic reasons, mostly focused on parking and parking surrounding it and ignoring the overall community need for more housing, particularly income-restricted housing. I just want to thank publicly Mayor Wu for listening to our letter from her fellow Rosendale residents and appointing this slate. Walk Up Rosendale and myself are here in strong support of this slate and would ask the committee to report it favorably and to vote to confirm them at the next meeting. And just lastly, I would say that it's been mentioned by some counselors and some panelists as well today about a new direction for the city on development, and wanted to just reiterate that call that we need to move towards an overall schema that relies much less on variances. And I think that's one point where I think most people tend to agree, regardless of what they want a particular outcome to be. But also, we would seek to legalize existing density. Most of our existing small apartment buildings or our triple deckers or 3-deckers, depending on what you call them, have been made illegal under zoning, even though they were built at a time when it was legal to have such density. We would ask that the city look strongly at legalizing that, so folks don't have to go through the process that Mr. Collins described earlier of year-longs just to add a dormer to your home. But we would go further and ask that the city look to rezones to enable that gentle density, so that the streets in our city that already have apartment buildings or triple deckers can have them once again, reduce those costs to affordability. The last thing I would say is that, there's been a lot of talk of community voice, and like I mentioned, Walk Up Rosendale seeks to turn that on its head and be a voice for yes when so often we see a voice of no, or a voice of suspicion, if you will, put forward about kind of the negatives when it comes to development. But we even heard a counselor mention to hold the line on variances, if you will. And I think respectfully, while we're seeking in our community, in our neighborhood, to be a voice for yes, there was an election last year. Mayor Wu was elected overwhelmingly and had been very public in her career as a counselor prior to that about her stance on enabling more transparency and reducing, affordability barriers in our zoning code, as well as focusing much more on housing and in particular in our climate crisis in lieu of focusing so much on parking. And I think that the residents and particularly voters of Boston have spoken on that, and I would respectfully ask that the current appointees, if they are confirmed, would keep that in mind, and that the counselors would keep that in mind and as well when opining on various projects to support or not. So with that, I'll close and would reiterate my call and Walk Up Rosendale's call to confirm this slate. And again, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We're okay, one? Good. Thank you guys for coming out tonight, and thank everybody that came here and testified. I appreciate it. This hearing is adjourned.